IB Nation, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Wednesday, everybody. And today we get to break down the Notre Dame versus Texas A&M matchup. Yesterday, we gave a little bit big picture preview, what's at stake for Notre Dame. And today we're getting into the weeds a little bit, and we're talking Notre Dame offense versus Texas A&M defense. And we're going to talk a little Texas A&M offense versus Notre Dame defense. And then we're going to wrap this all up today with a mailbag. So throughout the show, if you guys have some questions or comments you want to get in there, put a little MB for mailbag next to it. Or as always, you can put in a super chat. Those will always get bumped to the top. But Brian, it feels good that it's game week. I have now put the Miami loss in the rearview mirror. It's time to move on. This is a huge, huge matchup for Notre Dame on Saturday, and I'm ready to start breaking this thing down, man.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the closer we get to the game, the more excited about it I get, the more nervous about it I get. I always kind of get like that early in the season just because of the unknown. And as I've said before, not having control. I get more nervous about Notre Dame games than I did when I coached. Again, just I felt like I had some say in what we were doing when I was coaching. They don't have any say now, but I'm excited about it. And I'm looking forward to Notre Dame getting out there and playing well this weekend. So, all the people that say that if they don't – I literally saw a tweet today that said – from a Notre Dame person, fan, that said if Notre Dame doesn't dominate Texas A&M, they're not going to be able to make the playoff. And I'm just like, okay, is there a way to, virtually slap people? I would love to be able to do that if, that was an option.
Like on Facebook, you can, poke people.
Yeah,
on Twitter,
yeah.
You should be able to slap people.
It's so wild. But I'm just looking forward to seeing how this team responds and how they bounce back. And this is a good Texas A&M team. Trev, the more and more we watch the film, the more I'm like, look, I like this team. I had high hopes for A&M. I have them as a playoff team. They've got some stuff to clean up. But you know who else has some stuff to clean up? Everybody in college football except maybe Florida State right now, who's just absolutely cooking. Who'd have thunk it?
I was just about to.
Yeah. But I'm excited about it. This is going to be a heck of a football game between two really good football teams, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
You and me both, man. And I've changed my mindset a little bit around this. And like everybody did, I had to, lick my wounds a little bit after watching that 3-point loss to Miami.
Game sucked.
Yeah, it was a rough loss. But look, at the end of the day, this is why you're a Notre Dame fan. This is why student athletes choose to go to Notre Dame. And it's in games like this. We knew what the schedule was going in, and all offseason we talked about, hey, look, if you can make it through the first two games 1-1, you're right on schedule and you're going to be in a good spot. And in one light, it was rough going back and thinking about what all of Notre Dame's previous games were, going back to, last year when they were playing against an undefeated Army team in Yankee Stadium. And fast forward to now, a year later, they're playing a number 16, a top 20 SEC team at home under the lights. But again, this is what makes Notre Dame fantastic. You have these opportunities to get a signature win on your schedule. I feel good about it, Brian. I'm ready to start jumping into this thing, man. And where we're going to get started today is Notre Dame's offense versus Texas A&M's defense. And typically what we talk about, and this, I want to get your thoughts on this, Brian. I know sometimes, like last week for Miami, we talked about how Notre Dame's defense versus Miami's offense was the perceived strength versus strength. And I say perceived because we didn't have a sample size yet. Neither team had played a football game in 2025. We were going based off of last year, but one of the things that I think is interesting about this matchup is I don't know if we can deem, offense versus defense a strength versus a strength, or let's say a weakness versus a weakness. I think it's somewhere in between. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this matchup. What do you think?
It's talented, but still unproven sides of the ball. That's what I think this matchup is. And we'll have an interesting thought on the next one as well. But there's high hopes for the Notre Dame offense. There's a lot of talent in the Notre Dame offense. We saw flashes of that against Miami, but there's also areas where you're concerned about them going into this matchup. There's areas where you look at the Notre Dame offense and you say to yourself, I'm not quite sure if that's really where if that part of the team is really where we need it to be, or where we hope it is, or where we want it to be, or whatever the case may be. And then they show flashes of okay, but there was that, and there was that. And, it's game one. And how can you build on that in game two? You can't say, well, you've got a quarterback we've never seen throw a pass. We can't say this week, hey, the next time we see CJ Carr throw a pass in the game will be the first time now we've seen CJ Carr throw the pass in the game. And then you say, well, yeah, but now he's got to do it at home. All right, fair. But, he's going to have some up and down performances this year. It's not like, okay, Miami's the baseline and he's just going to get better every single week. overall he'll be on an upward trajectory, but there's going to be weeks where he doesn't play well. Is this the week that happens? The offensive line was terrible last weekend. Or do they have a bounce back performance? Do they have a little bit of pride and say, hey, look, we're really mad about how we played last week, so let's really come out and have a kick butt game this week? Or do they continue struggling? There's so many different aspects of these teams that you say, boy, I'm uncertain about how this is going to go. And then you look at Texas A&M's defense, and you're like, they gave up as many yards to UTSA or many points to UTSA and Utah State is basically what Miami gave up to Notre Dame, what Notre Dame scored against a really good Miami defense. So you ask yourself, like, okay, is Notre Dame going to be able to get going against this team? Has A&M been able to work out some of their kinks on defense now that they've had 2 games to work through that stuff? And now they're going into game 3. It's going to be interesting. So I'm very excited to kind of see what they can do.
You and me both, man. And one of the positives, and it's kind of like that weird gray area that you kind of have to walk, but you talk about the offensive line having to improve and things like Eli Raridan's drops have to get cleaned up. CJ Carr's reads need to be cleaned up. It's one of those where it is also a nice to have, and it'd be nice to see, but it's not like if we talk about a Purdue matchup or a Stanford matchup, where it's be nice if we see that, but we're fairly confident that they can go out, and if they just play their style of football, they'll be able to walk off the field and a win. In a matchup at night against Texas A&M, you get into the conversation of the offensive line has to play better. And this is going to be a really good measuring tool for this team moving forward and can be looked back on in a gauge to look at and say, okay, this is kind of where the season started to turn around. They got some things cleaned up. They got into the bye week. And I think that kind of falls into the category. I know we talked yesterday about what's at stake, big picture. But when you look at this offense, Brian, and what's at stake, I think that's one of those things is, can you build off of some of the positives that we did see against Miami? Can the passing game continue to take a next step? I think that's one of the things that's at stake for this offense.
Oh, there's no question. It's about, will there be growth? There will be growth by game 12 compared to game 1. But will there be growth from game 1 to game 2? And you hear all the time the cliche that, your biggest improvement happens from game 1 to game 2. I don't necessarily believe that. I think that is a coach speak thing, but I think there's some truth to the fact that in college football especially, you get that first game under your belt, and there's a lot more for you to see and evaluate that tells us, hey, we're going to be able to go out there and make this adjustment, that adjustment. You think you're really good at something because you're doing well against your team in fall camp in that area, but then you play another team and you realize maybe we're not as good at that as we thought, because our opposite side of the ball struggled doing this against another opponent, and then we struggled. Maybe we had a false sense of security who we are, or it's something like what we see with Notre Dame right now with with the defense. Like, look, you've got a new coach. He's learning some things. He's got to get his feet wet. Now he's got to come back out and make some adjustments to game 2. So there's a lot of these things, Trev, where this jump for Notre Dame has to happen, and it has to happen quick. And what did help them is it's not like they went from Miami in week 1 to A&M in week 2. They're going from Miami in week 1 to A&M in week 3. So you have had that extra time to work out some kinks, to get some reps in, to work on things. Hey, look, we're not good at this, so we're going to spend some extra time on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of the bye week, or Wednesday, Thursday of the bye week to say, hey, here's an area we got to fix, and so we're going to spend time to fix it. That's kind of where it goes to. So we'll see kind of how it goes. I mean, that's going to be a big thing, part of it. But like, that's the thing that we're still at, Travis. We still have a bit of an unknown right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those where you have a bigger sample size than what you had going into the Miami game, but definitely not as big as it will be come, week 8, week 9. And as you continue to move on when Notre Dame gets into their second bye week, I think another thing that's at stake for this offense is establishing what their identity is going to be. Last season, because of Riley Leonard missing the spring and him maybe not being as ready of a passer as early as what Mike Denbrock thought, there was a little bit of a lapse in identity with this offense. And when they got into really the bulk of the season, I think Louisville was kind of the turning point of, okay, we're going to be established in the trenches on offense. We're going to establish the run and then let Riley throw behind it. I think another thing at stake in this game is Who does Mike Denbrock and Marcus Freeman want to be on offense this year? He alluded to it a little bit in his press conference and talked about, hey, we know we have to get the ball into the hands of Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. They are two of our best playmakers on offense. With that being said, we also have to take advantage of what the defense is giving us. And if they're going to put 8 guys in the box, we need to look to the perimeter. So I think that's going to be one of the things that, what is your identity moving forward?
Right.
I think that's really interesting.
Well, and there's this thing that fans do where it's like, well, Jeremiah Love's got to touch the ball more, so they need to come out against Texas A&M and just run the ball and force it to him. All right, cool. What, you don't think Texas A&M has an idea that Notre Dame's going to try to get the ball to Jeremiah Love more? What if they come out and break down, put 8 in the box, 9 in the box, and say, hey, we're going to dare you to throw. We're going to do the same thing to you we did to Miami, and you're just supposed to pound it in up the middle just to prove some point about Jeremiah Love needing to touch the ball more? Or do you say, hey, listen, we've got to do things to set the tempo. We've got to do things to set the agenda. We've got to do things to set the pace of this game. And some of that may be throwing the football early to back Texas A&M off. Some of it may be getting the ball to Jeremiah Love in the pass game. The reality is you've got to get going early in this game, no matter how that is. You've got to get going early in this game. And when you look at the specific matchup of these two teams, and we'll pull the numbers up now, Trev, as we start to kind of to break down this, this matchup more specifically is, where the good thing for Notre Dame is, at least on paper, is the area where Notre Dame needs to get going, running the football, A&M hasn't been great at so far. Now, they shut down Utah State, but Utah State didn't run the ball very effectively in its opener against UTEP either. And so that's something that obviously is going to be a factor. But the counter to that is, but now they've had 2 games to kind of work that out. They've had 2 games to kind of figure out, okay, how are we going to, to improve in this regard? And so those are things that you look at and say, you will have to run the ball against A&M. Is really where I'm getting at. You're going to have to run the ball, but you're going to have to be able, but like, does it have to be series 1? That's going to be the question. But you've got to find a way to run the ball. Like, that's the biggest matchup in this game. You look at the A&M defensive line. It's not a huge defensive line. It's not. Their linebackers aren't very big. UTSA kind of moved them around a little bit. But you've got to be able to go out there and say, we've got to be able to establish a running game against them. Even if it means sometimes running into some heavier looks, but you've got to have some answers for that beyond just pulling and throwing RPOs. You've got to have some answers for that, because Texas A&M got ran all over in week 1, but they made some adjustments in week 2 and shut down Utah State's run game. That's what good well-coached teams do. This is going to be a different animal. At the end of the day, Trev, this is going to be what you're supposed to be best at. Notre Dame's got to be balanced. We're going to talk about the pass game, the receivers, the quarterback, but this is going to be the part of the offense where if you can't get this going at an elite level this season, this offense is going to struggle. It's going to struggle to be as good as it needs to be, and it'll struggle in this game, because if I'm Texas A&M, yeah, you saw some things from C.J. Card and the receivers, but there was nothing that Notre Dame showed in the pass game that has me afraid. Because, okay, these are some good receivers, but they can't protect the quarterback. I'm still concerned, if I'm Texas A&M, about them doing to us all game what they did to us last year and what they started to do against Miami, but then the game got away from them. Because what people forget is the long touchdown drive Notre Dame went on, where Jadarian Price is just ripping Miami up. They score a touchdown to make it 7-7. The next time the Notre Dame offense took a snap, other than downing it before halftime, it was 21-7. And it was halfway through the 3rd quarter. That changed things a little bit. A&M's going to want to make sure that they don't allow the Notre Dame run game to get going. Notre Dame's have to find a way to still get it going. You can't just say, hey, look, if teams are going to put 8 in the box all game, guess we're going to have to throw it 50 times. You're not going to be able to do that. How do they do that? That's what we're going to find out this Saturday. But that's going to be a key. So, yes, you need to have some answers that aren't just run the ball into loaded boxes, but you've got to find a way to run the football, Trevor. Even if that means you come out and hit a couple bombs early and that loosens them up, okay, sure, that's great. You've got to find a way to run the football in this game, which means, first and foremost, your offensive line is going to have to play a lot better than it did last weekend.
Yeah, 100%. That is going to be the number one unit that is kind of looked at under a microscope, and rightfully so after their performance in week one. But Brian, that's such a good point that you brought up. The areas that Notre Dame needs to improve on are the areas that through 2 games, Texas and A&M have struggled against opponents that aren't even close to the same level of talent that what Notre Dame's roster has in UTSA and Utah State. You know, you know, you look at 20 plus runs allowed. Notre Dame had an extremely explosive offense last year in the run game specifically. Now they only had one run at 20 plus yards, and I think that was Jadarian's on the play where I thought he was going to score on that play, cut it outside. And they had one run of 20 yards or more against Miami, but against UTSA and Utah State, Texas A&M allowed 4. And that's an area that Notre Dame is going to have to capitalize on. Now, the counter to that is what Texas A&M does well, and their defense has done an extremely good job of creating negatives. They have 18 tackles for loss in the first 2 games.
Yeah.
Notre Dame allowed 5 in their first game.
And it wasn't 13 against Utah State and 5 against UTSA. It was 9 and 9.
Yep.
Now against Utah State, there was a lot more negative, like bigger loss, plays in that regard. But they got 9 in both games. And what you see from this defensive line and what you see from this defense is they're not big. And let me pull up the depth chart real quick to kind of go over it. And because I put that on the message board earlier today, put the Texas A&M depth chart on the board, but their projected starting defensive line is 264, 295, 317, and 248. They've got one guy in the rotation, Albert Regis, who's the projected starter at nose. He's 317. Dalen Evans is 315 or 314. And then a freshman, DJ Sanders, who's I don't think he's played a ton in the first 2 games, but he'll play more and more and more. He's a very talented freshman player, but he's 315. So there's some decent size there. But for the most part, Trev, they're not a very big defensive line. I mean, they've got DJ Hicks is 295, Tyler Onyedem is 295. They play Landon Rank, who's a freshman, who's 294. They're not small, but they're not big. Their ends are their backup end to Dayon Hayes, TJ Searcy, who they're listed as OR starters. He's 255. The number 2 behind Cassius Howe, Rylan Kennedy, he's 229. Marco Jones, a freshman, is 258. One of their bigger ends. So but here's the thing, they know that. So they don't go out there in the last game and say, hey, let's try to play big boy football in 2-gap all day. They are aggressive. They attack. They say, this is what we're good at. Let's go get them. And that's allowed them to be very disruptive in their first 2 games, Trev. And that's good coaching. I mean, good coaches say, hey, look, this is who we are. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to go get after it. Now, they had 6 sacks in the second game. So in game 1, they had 1 sack. So 8 of their TFLs were run stops. Against Utah State, only 3 of them were because they had 6 sacks. But the difference is UTSA was a ball game in the third quarter. That was a game. Like, it was a close game in the third quarter, because the A&M was up, but it was competitive in the first half. Then UTSA comes out and rips off a long run, 75-yard touchdown run in the third quarter. And all of a sudden, it's a game again. Whereas against Utah State, it was over at halftime. So Utah State came out second half needing to throw football. So it was different circumstances, but the point is they were disruptive in both games. And they're going to watch this Notre Dame defense or offensive line and see how much trouble they had against Miami. And they're going to say, we're going to attack. We're going to attack with our edges. Cassius Howe's been phenomenal the first 2 games. He's been outstanding first 2 games. He's going to attack. They're going to attack with their big guys. They're going to try to go. They're going to try. I would be willing to bet you that we're going to see a number of stunts run at the right side of the Notre Dame offensive line. They're going to try to take advantage of those young guys at right guard with some different movement stuff to try to get some run throughs either from the second level or doing some hard slants across the guard's face with a nose and then looping an end around to try to see if they can pick it up. So I think we're going to see some things from Texas A&M to go at the Notre Dame offensive line, because what they're going to learn from last year's game is they tried to play Notre Dame straight up a lot last year, and Notre Dame gashed them running the football. I think they're going to come out in this game and say, we're going to try to create negatives, and the Notre Dame offensive line is going to have to play clean football, and that's not something they did a lot. Like, I heard somebody say on our message board, there was something was very true. And they said, look, they looked at something that Landon Tangwell did, because he did 2 really nice videos on his Twitter page this week. And we were breaking down the game, but he was talking about like they were just one guy away. Well, we broke down one of those plays on the Upon Further Review. We did that 3rd and 1 Q kick that they ran where CJ Carr got stopped. Look, if Gerby Lambert blocks this down, this is a first down and you're moving. That's not actually a positive, though, when it keeps happening over and over again. But the positive, however, the takeaway, I should say, is that kind of stuff is a little easier to clean up than you just got your butt kicked all game, which they didn't really get their butts kicked in the run game against Miami. There weren't a lot of guys getting driven into the running backs. It was you didn't do your job or you didn't do your job the right way. So that's where I have some hope that Notre Dame will be able to kind of quickly make adjustments in the run, because it was just you're running this play and Emil Wagner gets whipped. Everybody else did their job, or you're doing this one play and Gerby Lambert blocks the wrong guy, or Sullivan Absher blocks the wrong guy. So those are things that I look at, Trev, and say, you clean that stuff up and your right tackle shows up to play, then I do think there's opportunities to run the ball on Texas A&M. That is their a vulnerability for this defense. Even though they did improve in week 2, that is certainly a vulnerability that they have in this game. And Notre Dame's going to have to find ways to get that going. And the good news also is there were a couple times where if the ball would have been given instead of pulled and thrown on the RPO, there was a couple plays where I think we would have seen at least one more 20-plus yard run from Jeremiah Love in that game also. So I think that's a part of the game where A&M knows you're going to run the ball. You know you need to run the ball. Can you assert yourself in this game? What Mike Denbrock's got to be careful of is, because he does have a really gifted quarterback. He does have a more talented receiving core. And when you've got those weapons that you haven't had since you were at LSU or your first in at Notre Dame, you can maybe be more willing to quickly turn to them in a game like this. And while I'm okay with that to a degree, because I want balance, you can't completely go away from this, and you can't allow the defense to take your run game away, because A&M knows what RPO reads are. And they can just line up and say, we're going to force the quarterback to pull the ball and throw it. You have to have some answers for that. And so this Mike Denbrock versus Mike Elko coaching matchup is going to be a really big part of whether or not Notre Dame can have some success in this game, because that's who he's going against. He's like, sometimes people are like, oh, I'm looking for this head coaching match. Those head coaches aren't really doing a whole lot against each other. It's the coordinator matchups. Well, in this instance, Mike Elko is the play caller for the Texas A&M defense. So a lot of people getting on Mike Denbrock after last week's game. Knowing Mike Denbrock, I have a feeling he's going to take that a little bit to heart and say, okay, I got something for you coming up this week.
Yeah, I would feel pretty safe in saying that as well. Brian, when we get into the areas where Notre Dame matches up well, as we kind of get more into the weeds with this matchup, specifically with their offensive defense, what are some of the key areas where you believe that Notre Dame matches up well against Texas A&M? You hinted a little bit at the offensive line being like physically bigger than Texas A&M's defensive line. Notre Dame's offensive line is going up against a smaller defensive line than what they went up against in week 1. Would you call that a matchup that somewhat favors Notre Dame, or what? How do you view that?
I do. I do think that's a matchup that favors Notre Dame. I think that now on paper, now with what Notre Dame should be, is it a matchup that favors Notre Dame based on what we saw on film last week? No. Based on what we've seen on film the first 2 weeks, it's advantage Texas A&M. But it doesn't always work like that. So for me, it's if you play your game and they play their game, you should have the advantage. You're more experienced. You're bigger. You have more. I just think more God-given talent. There's there's a couple situations where it's like A&M's got good players, but Notre Dame's high-level talent is just better. Doesn't mean they're always going to play that way. Just means that they if they play their game, they're capable of. And we saw it last year. What's interesting is last year's A&M defense had more just God-given talent up front, just raw top first, second round, just raw talent. This defensive line plays harder, or at least has so far. Even in the first game against UTSA, like you watch the game, they weren't getting blown off the ball. They had some run fit issues. They had some things where like the timing on some of their line games wasn't great. I thought UTSA did some decent things to kind of go at them and then just kind of played hard and created some opportunities. So it's like, okay, last year you were able to take advantage of a talented defensive line that was very undisciplined. This year, I saw a big improvement in discipline from week 1 to week 2 from your defensive line. So I don't think you can expect that they're not going to be the same D line they were in the opener against UTSA. They're going to be improved, but that doesn't mean that you still shouldn't be able to run the football on them. And so I just want to see Notre Dame have a run game that allows them to mix up downhill versus the lateral stuff. Marcus Freeman made a comment about how they ran a little bit too much laterally. I think that's true to a degree. I also think there's like when you go back and watch the Denver Broncos when they won their 2 Super Bowls with Terrell Davis, their best play was outside zone. I mean, they'd run it off stretch, they'd toss it because you just get that movement laterally and it opens up running lanes for your best line for your elite running backs. Well, that's kind of what Notre Dame's mid zone does. It's more of a lateral run. They ran that play over 90 times last year, Trev, and averaged 9.1 yards per carry on that play. You need that. You don't get stubborn and just run inside zone and duo all day against Texas A&M because that's playing into their hands. But you also need to do more where you are still going at them. I felt last week there was too much, outside zone and mid zone and things like that. There wasn't enough just downhill inside zone runs, downhill duo runs. There wasn't like a pure counter. I thought in the game it was counter, but if you go back and watch it, they weren't running counter. They were all stepping to the call. They were just bucket stepping with their backside linemen on outside zone, which was then combined with the running back footwork adjustments from Jaywan Sider that I don't love. That was why you had the running back right on the butt of the offensive lineman when they were trying to run that play. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. And so you're going to have to be a little bit more balanced in order to have success this week running the football. It can't just be all lateral stuff, and it can't just all be right at you because while I don't think this is a great Texas A&M defensive line, I love this linebacking core. And in week 2, I thought they did a much better job of kind of keeping the blockers off of them and letting them get to the football. And that's something that they're going to have to continue doing. But that, Notre Dame's going to have to find some answers for that, man. That's just what they're going to do. I mean, Torian York already has 12 tackles in the season. He had 10 against UTSA. He only had 2 last week because, they blew him out. They were getting 3, going 3 and out and just getting him off the field pretty easily in the first half. And he didn't play a whole lot in the second half. So it just comes down to it, Trev, where, you tell me what you think, but I think this is a matchup that on paper, talent-wise, if you want to count the number of high draft picks, things like that, I think the Notre Dame offense has more of this than the Texas A&M defense does in the trenches. But all I know is when you pop in film of what we've seen so far in 2025, A&M has been better than what we saw from Notre Dame in their second game. But this is the whole point. If we were talking about a game in week 2, where as much as Notre Dame struggled against Miami, if we were only evaluating what we saw against UTSA, I'd feel pretty good about this matchup. Yeah. Like, okay, yeah, I know they struggle, but this isn't Miami, and I just watched this team give up 203 yards to UTSA, and I like where Notre Dame is at, but A&M had the chance to make adjustments, and Notre Dame didn't have a chance to make adjustments and then work them out in a game. They've had time to make adjustments, but not adjustments and then work them out in the game. So I kind of was a little all over the place with that one, Trev, but I just think at the end of the day, Notre Dame should have the advantage in this matchup, but we need to see them play to their potential, something they didn't come anywhere close to in the first game.
And that's really key for me in this matchup, Brian, between Notre Dame's offensive line and really Texas A&M's front seven, because I love this linebacking core. On paper, could not agree with you more. On paper, this matchup favors Notre Dame. When you look from left to right, who they have in their starting lineup, who they have rotating in between the guards. But I said it in the postgame show. This is the unit that is in full-on show-me mode because we basically spent the entire offseason talking about, on paper, this could be one of the best offensive lines, if not the best offensive line in the country. They didn't play like a top 50 offensive line when they played against Miami. So do they have the potential to win this matchup? Yes. I file this a little bit more under the category of toughest matchup for them based on what we've seen on film. Yeah, I look at this Texas A&M defensive line and I look what they bring to the table, and very similar to Notre Dame's defensive line, this is another unit that can come at you in waves. It is. They do a really good job rotating. I mean, they have all of their defensive linemen, like really in the top part of their rotation. They've all played over 47 snaps in their first 2 games, except for Rylan Kennedy, who's at 36 snaps. And then they also have younger guys rotating in like Marco Jones and Landon Rake and DJ Sanders, you mentioned. They've all played at least 22 snaps. But at the top,
six defensive interior players have played over 20 snaps in the first 2 games.
Yep. And five edge players for them have also, I mean, they're closer to playing over 30 snaps a game. Marco Jones has the least high tallied snap count at 28. You know, Cassius Howell's leading the way at 67. TJ Searcy is 58. Deion Hayes has 49. Rylan Kennedy has 36. So over the course of 2 games, you start to look at it, and it's relatively even across the board, all things considered, when you look at how they rotate on defense. And so that is a concern of, you know, similar to how we talk about Notre Dame's defensive line. I don't think they have a Bryce Young or Boubacar high ceiling talent on their defensive line. Marco Jones maybe could get there down the road, but again, he's a true freshman.
Their freshman he's the one that could be that.
Yeah.
But he's, like you said, he's a freshman.
But very similar to the light where we talk about how, you know, when we talked about the Miami game, it's, you know, when Francis Mauigoa is going on snap 65 and he's going up against a Boubacar Traore who could be going on snap 40, that could make a difference. And I also have that same thought around Notre Dame's offensive line when Emil Wagner, who struggled mightily in week 1, is going on snap 60 of the game. Somebody like Cassius Howell might be on snap 35 or snap 40. And so those are kind of the differences that it makes. And if their D-line is able to remain fresh, especially when you consider how they play, very fast, they slash a lot. They have the ability and the speed to go on longer stunts, similar to how Donovan Heinisch was used. You know, when Notre Dame's offensive line is having to counter that on top of having 2 linebackers in Scooby Williams and Torian York who fly downhill. And I mean, Torian York last season was credited with 38 run stops in 13 games. Drake Bowen in 16 games had 30. Man, just to paint the picture, that's not good. That's not bad. There's different schematically, but it just goes to show you that Torian York is a player that flies downhill and makes plays around the line of scrimmage. I mean, Scooby Williams, I think he already has like 3.5 tackles for a loss on the season. Torian York already has a handful of run stops credited to his stat sheet. So it's one of those where I do think this is a pretty tough matchup for Notre Dame just based on film. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. On paper, this matchup should favor Notre Dame, and we're going to see that unfold on Saturday night. I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I put this in my the notes that I have for today's show, and the areas where Notre Dame matches up well, I said winning on the perimeter. You know, comparing their offensive skilled talent with Texas A&M's defensive skilled talent. I want to get your thoughts on that, Brian.
I agree, Trev. I think this is a matchup where, again, on paper, Notre Dame should be able to thrive in this game. I think Texas A&M's defense did well the past game, first 2 games. If you look at the numbers, I mean, on paper, it looks good. They held opponents 171 passing yards. They're giving up 5.3 yards per attempt, 9.2 yards per completion. If they keep these numbers through the course of the season, right now it ranks them in the 20s because you've got a lot of teams playing nobodies. But if you look at last year, for example, their number of 5.3 yards per attempt would have led the nation last season. You know, you look at the quarterback rating of 121.43. You know, that wouldn't be as good. That's top 40 because they haven't had any interceptions. But their 9.2 yards per completion would be top 10 in college football from last year. Their 171 passing yards per game would rank them 5th in college football last year. So those are areas, Trev, where if Notre Dame can have some success throwing the football, you're going to be like, oh, that's great. This is a really good team. But I don't know that they're necessarily as good as those numbers would indicate. And that's kind of going to be a bit of a test this weekend. But I also didn't think Miami's secondary was any great shakes either. And it really comes down to it. The lack of success for Notre Dame, in my opinion, throwing the ball last week wasn't about Miami's secondary as much as it was Notre Dame didn't have time to throw the football. And so I'm sorry. I had to mute some Texas A&M fan who was talking out of his lower orifices. So we're going to get back to talking real ball with grown-ups now. So when I look at this matchup, Trev, you got to protect the quarterback first and foremost. I mean, we're still got to, before we can even get to the skill player matchup, we got to go back to that O-line, D-line matchup and say they got to handle their business. But if they can, then you are in a situation where I do think Notre Dame has some advantages. One of the things that people look at last year's game when they see the pass game numbers from Notre Dame, and I broke down at the time, there were plays where multiple guys were open and the ball wasn't getting thrown. Or there were pressures being given up. There was one particular play, if you guys remember this, where Riley Leonard looked through a backside dig to Chris Mitchell that was low. Chris had to go down on it. Well, if he just throws an accurate pass there, Chris has got 4 or 5 steps on that DB. He catches it. He's got to make the safety miss, and that's it. It's minimum a 15-yard game. On that same play, Bo Collins is open for what would have been a touchdown in the corner route because he beat the corner so bad at the top, the guy fell down. There were opportunities last year in the passing game against them. You just couldn't take advantage of them. You've got opportunities to take. You're going to have those opportunities. You've got to take advantage of them this time. And that includes throwing the football, protecting the quarterback, but you also got to throw the football. Now, on paper, I think the Notre Dame has a more talented receiving core than it did last year. Like, that's another area where on paper it should be better. I don't think they played like it overall last week. I think Malachi Fields made a great play down the field, counter that with a fumble. I didn't love the effort from Jaden Greathouse in the game. He wasn't targeted much in the pass game. Jordan Faison looked great when he knew he was getting the ball. Didn't play that hard when he wasn't getting the ball. So those are things they're going to have to get corrected. I hope that the film session with the receiving core this past week was not a pleasant one with Mike Brown and Mike Denbrock to say, listen, we're in a situation now where we have a quarterback that will read the whole field. So you got to make sure you're running your route like you're going to get the ball. And if you're tired, let us know. We'll put somebody else in there, give you a breather, let him go, and then we'll get you back in there. That's not an insult either. It's like, dude, it's not like if, coach, I need a breather. That's fine. Let's get one of these other talented receivers in there. I'd get KK in there, get Will Pauling in there, get Micah Gilbert in there, and then catch your breath, get a breather, get some water, catch your breath, and then get back in there when you're fresh and you can go hard again as your routes, because you've got a quarterback that will find that backside dig. But you've got to make sure that you're giving that kind of effort to get that football. There are also some things I want to see Mike Denbrock do schematically to take advantage of the secondary in this game too, Trev, because it's a talented secondary. It's a good secondary, but it's not an elite secondary. It's not like Ohio State secondary was last year. To me, it's more like Penn State's. It's good, but it's not elite. And so you've got to be able to go at the nickelback. You've got to be able to go at Tyreek Chappell. You've got to be able to take advantage of the corners opposite Will Lee, who I think have played well so far. I mean, I don't think Des Ricks and Julio Humphrey have given up a completion yet. Against the teams they're going against. Will Lee has given up some plays. You've got to be able to go at him. He's not Leonard Moore. He's just not. He's a good player. He's not Leonard Moore. You got to be willing to go at him. But when those opportunities come, those receivers got to make plays. This is definitely an area where Notre Dame should have some success. But like with a lot of what we're going to talk about today's matchup, Trevor, that only happens if they play better than what we saw in the opener.
Agreed. One thing that I thought was kind of funny that you and I had talked about before we went live was what some of the lines were for this game, specifically around player props. And on FanDuel, when you go and you look, Malachi Fields for his receiving yards is once again under 40 yards. It's at 38.5. That's where his over-under is set at on FanDuel, which again I thought was odd, considering I brought this stat up during Miami week. But Malachi Fields has now played 25 football games since the start of 2023. In 21 of those now, he's gone over 40 yards. I thought that was interesting. I thought it was interesting that after watching him against Miami catch the ball twice, I guess technically 3 times because he had the fumble, but watching him catch the football downfield twice and go over 40 yards, I thought his line would have been set a little higher. And then also Jaden Greathouse's line is set at 28.5, which you and I were also talking about before, but I don't know if that's more of a testament to Notre Dame's receiving core still being a relative unknown, if that's more of a testament to they don't think that the offensive line is going to be able to give CJ enough time to find his guys down the field, or if they think that highly of the Texas A&M secondary, because on paper, they held both UTSA and Utah State to under 180 passing yards in each of their matchups. So I think that's going to be interesting to follow. That's going to be a fun matchup. But I agree with you, Brian. On paper, Notre Dame's skilled talent across the board. That's not necessarily just the wide receiver position. I go and I look at the running backs versus their linebackers. Scooby Williams and Torian York are fantastic linebackers, good football players. That, to your point that you brought up yesterday, I don't know if Torian York at 5'11" is some day one NFL draft pick prospect. He's a great college linebacker. I think that matchup still favors Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. I think if Torian York has to go out in coverage against 6'7", 252-pound Eli Raridan, that matchup kind of favors Eli Raridan. I think of, look, Bo Collins was a good boundary receiver for Notre Dame last year, answered the bell each week. He had 5 catches for 62 yards last year, and that back shoulder catch that he had on their game-winning touchdown drive, essentially. I know they had the field goal drive to really put it away, but on their touchdown drive, that back shoulder that he caught was against Will Lee. Bo Collins ended the game with 62 yards. And so
if you do that again this game, just don't shove him in the back, because I don't think you're going to get away with it this time.
No, I don't think so either. Definitely not getting away with it. Yeah. Definitely not. But I look at these matchups across the board, and to your point, Brian, on paper, they do favor Notre Dame. But again, it's that show me mode thing, and the offensive line is going to have to handle their business up front in order to get the ball to the hands of their playmakers. When you look at this matchup overall, though, Brian, who are some players in your eyes? And some are obvious, and some may be a little bit unsung. But who has to shine in this matchup on offense for Notre Dame?
I mean, it starts with your tackles. You need Anthony Knapp and Emil Wagner to play well in this game. They have to play at least as well as they did last year against A&M. And they weren't great against A&M last year, but they held their own. There were enough snaps where Riley Leonard had time to throw the football where you can take advantage of it. I hope that they play better than that they did last year. You'd think with 16 and 17 starts now under your belt, and you're not going against Nick Scorton and Shamar Stewart, a second and a first round draft pick, respectively. You'd think that and Cassius Howell also was on last year's team. You'd think that they would be able to play better, but after what we saw last week, I don't know what to expect from that unit in this game. And so I think it starts right there, Trev. You need to be able to come out, protect the quarterback, and Anthony was good in the run game. He wasn't great in the run game last week, but he was good in the run game last week. Emil was bad in both areas. That's why, like all week, everybody's, bench Anthony Knapp, Anthony Knapp. And I'm not necessarily opposed to finding another left tackle, but he was not Notre Dame's worst offensive lineman last week in the last game. Emil Wagner was. Now, I'm not as upset about it from the standpoint of find a new guy, because I think that was more of an anomaly performance, I hope, from Emil. But he's going to have to bounce back. He's going to have to bounce back and perform at a higher level, I hope, and think. Like Marcus Freeman said something that I agree with but don't agree with to a degree, where he talked about captains shouldn't be judged on how they perform. I understand that, and to a degree, if you have a guy who's a great leader but not a great player, and the players listen and respect him, he doesn't have to be a great player. But you also can't have a captain not judged by his performance at all. There has to be a level of both. And when a captain goes out there and gets his absolute butt kicked in a game, that's a bad sign for your success in that game. And that's it. If that captain doesn't respond in a way that a captain should respond, which is to bust tail the next 2 weeks to get ready for the next game and then play better, that's a much bigger problem. A much bigger problem. So when I look at this, Trev, Emil and Anthony have to play better football. There's other matchups we're going to discuss. I want to get a matchup that you're intrigued by. But for me, that matchup, those players have to perform better. They have to hold their own against Cassius Howell, Deion Hayes, Marco Jones in pass pro. But then that's also an area where they should be able to win that matchup in the run game. And that's all I'm looking for. Hold your own in the pass game, win the battle in the run game. They should be able to do that. And if they can, then I think this offense gets going. I really do. I think it's that simple. You think that performance, and if I'm saying something you think is out of off base, if you think I'm wrong, you have permission, as you always do. But I'm telling you, tell me that you're like, dude, you're exaggerating. You're being emotional. That performance against Miami was as bad, if not worse, than anything we saw from the tackles in 2021. Now, there were worse performances in 21 at left tackle early in the season, but I thought Josh Lugg held his own most weeks. I don't remember a game where they both got dominated the way that these guys got dominated against Miami. They were awful. Do you want to disagree with that, Trevor? Push back on that? All right. And you still had the ball late in the fourth quarter with a chance to tie or win the football game.
Mm-hmm.
Point being, if they just play good football, hey, they both had solid games. Notre Dame beats Miami.
Yep.
They beat Miami. If just that unit plays better, I think that could be they were that bad.
Yep.
That it could have that big of a difference in a game. So if they come out and play well and everybody else just kind of does what they did in the opener, this team is going to score points and win the game. If they don't, then they're going to struggle again because this is a good Texas A&M football team. And I don't think you can assume you're going to hold them to 13 points again this year. In fact, I'd be a little surprised by it because, A, your defense has got its own problems. The other part is this is a much better Texas A&M offense than the one you faced last year, in my opinion. Their O-line and running backs every bit as good, but they're better, like Notre Dame, they're better on the perimeter, and they have a quarterback that fits their system better than what we saw in the opener last year. So I don't think you can just assume, hey, we're going to go try to win another 23-20 or 20-13 or 17-13 game. If that's how you're calling games this week, this post-game show may not be a lot of fun. You got to come out and be aggressive, take the fight to A&M, score points, and you can't do that if the tackles don't play a lot better and thrive in this matchup. It really does start and end there. Thoughts on that, Trev, and then any other matchups? I know you've got some matchups that you're intrigued by that you think are going to be important in this game as well.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with the offensive tackles, and that's where you have to start. With Emil, it's in both phases. With Anthony Knapp, continue being a solid run blocker, a really impactful run blocker. And at the end of it's put up or shut up time. You have to improve in pass protection. Have to. And I hope that the coaching staff did their due diligence in putting him in a position where it's like, hey, this is a must. It's not, we're not hanging our hats on, well, it was true freshman season, and it's you got to step up, and it's now. Because if you don't take advantage of it in this game, like you talked about, there's not going to be playoff discussions for quite some time with Notre Dame, barring some turnaround from things that are outside of your hands. Anthony Knapp absolutely has to improve in pass protection. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no but maybe. There's no what if. There's no but maybe. You have to. Bottom line, end of story. The next matchup that I'm going to be intrigued by is the right guard position. And Texas A&M's different rotation between Tyler O'Needham, Albert Regis, DJ Hicks, and Dalen Evans. Those are kind of the front four leaders of the interior of their defensive line in terms of snaps. The right guard position is one that I'm willing to say, okay, both Gerby Lambert and Sullivan Absher played their first meaningful snaps in a football game Sunday night on the road against Miami. Now, with that being said, you now have a game, or at least, I guess, how snaps get divvied up, halves of experience. You also have had a bye week and another full week of game prep to get ready. I'm not expecting them to play a perfect game, but at its core, if we can sit down in the post game and say one of Sullivan Absher or Gerby Lambert just did their job. Did their job, not Michael Orr blindside, carry somebody over to the sideline and throw them over a fence, but just you're not missing assignments, you're blocking the correct person, because each player has the athleticism to be very impactful blockers in both the run game and the pass game. But that's going to be another one that I'm looking at. because you and I have talked about before, when you get pressure right up in your face, it's a little bit more difficult than there's things you can do to counter edge pressure. Now, not a whole lot you can do when both of your tackles give up an edge pressure, but there's different things that you can do versus pressure coming right into your face. That's just kind of our takeaways from it. Some quarterbacks are different. That's another matchup that I'm keeping my eye on. And then the last one we kind of already talked about. It is that Will Lee versus the Malachi Fields / Micah Gilbert matchup.
That's
going
a
to be one
huge one in this game, Trevor. Like, look, you brought Malachi Fields into Notre Dame not to just be a solid couple catch a game guy. All right. You just didn't. Mm-hmm. And while I didn't love his first performance, I also understood why he didn't get the ball more and some different things. But while everybody's talking about you need to force the ball to Jeremiah Love, I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Jeremiah Love might be the best offensive player in college football. That's fine. But I think you also need to come into this game with a game plan to say we're going to get Malachi Fields football, and we're going to get Jaden Greathouse the football too. I think those two matchups, Will Lee against Malachi Fields and then Tyreek Chappell against Jaden Greathouse, are two huge matchups in this game that I want to see Notre Dame take advantage of. And there may be some times where I'd like to see them line up in a way where maybe you've got Greathouse backside and Malachi Fields in the slot against Tyreek Chappell and see how they respond, because then you've got your slot fade stuff. We saw Notre Dame run a slot fade last week with Malachi Fields, and as I showed in the breakdown, I actually broke this play down, Trev, on the Upon Further Review. I was fine with CJ's read as a first-time starter. His read was appropriate. Guy sunk, tight ends open, throw it, get the easy 9 yards. But when he becomes more experienced, he's going to see that pre-snap matchup and say, okay, I'm reading the flat defender anyway. If I see Malachi smoke him off the line, I'm going there. Even though it's technically, this other kind of throw. So I want to see that. I want to see that opportunity. I want to see him go at him. But I think basically going after Will Fields and Tyreek Chappell in ways that allow those guys to be successful is going to be important. Will Lee's a good football player, and just running go routes and back shoulders on him all day is not necessarily the recipe for success, although I want to see them take some shots on him. But, doing things where you're trying to get some quick game involved, running some of those backside digs. Hopefully they're able to sell those routes a little bit more effectively than they have at times with the choppy backside. But I think there's going to be some opportunities in both of those matchups for those guys to go out there and have success, and we're going to need to see them both get going. You're not going to win a lot of football games against good teams when Malachi Fields and Jaden Greathouse play an entire game and combine for 2 catches. That's not going to go real well. Like 2 catches, I'm down the field. I know that Malachi also had the behind the line, but I'm more talking about down the field stuff. 2 catches. And I think they were only targeted 4 or 5 times the whole game. Those are guys that need to get fed to football early and have to step up and play better. We need to see Jaden Greathouse, who's a great talent. Look, dude, this is your chance to show that what you did in the playoffs wasn't just a fluke. You got hot. You got shut out in your first game. You either can get upset about that and kind of complain about that, or you can come out in this next game and say, all right, I'm going to take this out on Texas A&M. And that's what I hope we see from him. So, yeah.
Agreed. Last bit for me before we kick it over to the defense, Brian. It's not necessarily a matchup. It's just more of a schematic thought for Notre Dame's offense. I would like to see them attack the middle of the field a little bit more than what they did against Miami as well. You have the personnel to do it. You have a 6'7", 252-pound tight end. We've seen what Jaden Greathouse can do over the middle of the field all throughout last season. I think I understand why they weren't as privy to it in game 1 of a redshirt freshman's first career start. But as the season progresses, I want to see them start attacking the middle of the field more. I mean, if they roll down a safety to cover Eli Raritan, if Tyreek Chappell is on Jaden Greathouse, if they kick out a linebacker on either one of them, or if they move Faison or Pauling into the slot, attacking the middle of the field could be a way to soften up kind of that second level of that defense to spring a Jeremiah Love, to spring a Jadarian Price. So that's something that I want to see them take advantage of as well. Any final thoughts, Brian, on Notre Dame's offense?
Look, you've got weapons, you've got really talented players. You've got to find ways to get them going early in this game. And we'll dive more into the keys to victory, but there are areas where this is a talented Texas A&M defense, but this is not an elite talented Texas A&M defense. And if you're the team that we think you are, then there needs to be some plays made. And that's going to be a big thing is you've got some advantage, whether it's you talked about Eli Raritan against their linebackers. I think more often than not, we'll see Eli Raritan matched up against Scooby Williams more than Torian York. But you know who I think you can get matched up against Torian York? Jeremiah Love. And find ways to do that. And so I that's something I want to see too is let's be more creative with Jeremiah Love maybe early in the game. Do more out of your 21 personnel would be very intriguing in this game where, you know, like you do have Jeremiah Love and Jordan and Jadarian Price in the field together, and you have some different matchups with that. You did a little bit of that early last year in this game, and Jeremiah Love got matched up against a safety or a linebacker and cooked him. Riley Leonard didn't look for him at all. I think CJ Carr probably would. So that's going to be something too, is they just don't have anybody individually can match up with Jeremiah Love. And you've got to take advantage of that in more ways than just, you know, some quick motion them out cuts where it's like, okay, that was great. I like that, but I want to see more. I want to see a slip screen earlier in the game when it's not 3rd and 21 and you're just trying to get some yards back. I want to see it on a 1st and 10 or a 2nd and 7. I want to see some angle routes. I want to see some, you know, Jeremiah Love running some crossers and some slot fades and things like that to where you're getting him in some of those matchups. I think they wanted to do that last week, and I just think the weather wasn't cooperating. Because we saw first drive of the game, the play where he rolled left and threw the ball, that was Jeremiah Love on an outcut. Don't know if that was the you know, sprinting left is the way that I'd want him to get the ball there, but that's what they decided to go with. But I just think that's a big thing. You've got talent advantages with Malachi Fields and Jaden Greathouse and Eli Raritan and Jeremiah Love. You've got weapons. Find ways to use those guys and find ways to get into matchups where you can take advantage of those advantages and go out there and win the football game. So that's going to be a big part of success in this game is going to be taking advantage of those matchups.
Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it for part 1 of today's show here. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to break down Notre Dame's defense versus the Texas A&M offense. But before we get there, make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, the Irish Breakdown channel, as well as the CFB Nation channel. Vince and I are going to be going live tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern time to do, I believe, what is the 4th installment of the spread option, where we're going to be breaking down some of the bigger games from this. Is it the 3rd?
Yeah.
Because week 0, week 1, week 2.
Did you do a week 0?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then that would be 4. I forgot that that's right. You guys did the Kansas State, Iowa State one. That's right. Number 4.
So that's that we were talking about that on the show the other day. It's like it's like the 4th show, but it's week 3. Vince wants to put a petition together to get rid of week 0. It's a fun conversation over there.
You know what? Like, just real fun. I actually like week 0. I just think there's too many games in week 0. Yeah. I think you and I might have been talking about this the other day, Trev, but I would like to see where you have 4 kickoff classics played in each region of the country. Like that opening week 0 weekend, you know, maybe 2 games on Friday, 2 games on Saturday, or maybe 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, where you have like a kickoff classic, you know, maybe at MetLife or Gillette or something on the East Coast. You have, you know, a kickoff classic somewhere in East Coast could also mean Pittsburgh, Philly, DC, you know, something in the East Coast. Then have one that's, you know, DC where the Redskins play could be one. Then have one in the Southeast, you know, then have one on like the Midwest, and then have one in the Southwest or West, like 4 different regions of the country, playing them in an NFL stadium, have them be different sponsored kickoff classics. Like Notre Dame kicked off their 1989 season with a game like that, where they played Virginia. And I think there was like 2 back then, but I would love to see something like that. Played in America, not in another country, but I think that'd be cool. And then find like, because you'd have those 4 games, and then you say, okay, we're going to get matchups between the big leagues, you know, so we're going to have Notre Dame and the Power 4 teams. We're going to schedule games with them playing against each other. So and try to get as many like really cool marquee matchups as you can. It doesn't have to be like Bama versus Ohio State, Notre Dame against Texas. If you can get those, great. But even something like we saw like with Notre Dame and Virginia back then, Notre Dame was the powerhouse, defending champion. Virginia was an upstart. I'd even see something like that, Ohio State versus Georgia Tech, something like that would be a fun matchup. But I just want to see more of those type of things in week 0, and that's it. I don't want to see like 7-8 games, and no, I don't want to see all that stuff. And then you're spotlighting these games, and then you're talking about the kickoff classics, and it was a kickoff classic, and I think it was the other one was the pigskin classic. I think what they called the other one back then, and that'd be a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
I'd be on board with that. I would absolutely be on board with that. But yes, make sure you're subscribed to both channels. And then as always, make sure you're subscribed to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 2 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by FanDuel, we are talking Notre Dame defense versus the Texas A&M offense. And similar to our conversation when it was Notre Dame's offense versus Texas A&M's defense, this is one of those where it's not as clear if this is strength on strength or weakness versus weakness. I think this is one of those matchups where, again, 2 talented sides of the ball, but what is the real Texas A&M offense? Because their sample size against UTSA and Utah State was good, but putting up numbers against significantly inferior opponents. With Notre Dame's defense, they have a new defensive coordinator with Chris Ash, and the first performance wasn't all that great in certain areas. And so this is one where I don't know, again, if we can really deem it a clear-cut strength on strength or weak versus weak or strength versus weakness type of deal. This is going to be a really, really intriguing matchup to watch unfold on Saturday.
If we'd have talked about this before the season, I'd have said, boy, this is going to be a great matchup. Man, you've got the Notre Dame defense against the Texas A&M run game and this big offensive line and this deep backfield, which I think you and I ranked both had in the top 4 coming into the season. And boy, I can't wait for this. But now you look at it, Trevor, and you're like, I don't know about this Notre Dame defense. And the thing that's most impressed me about Texas A&M so far early season is their ability to throw football outside. Like, complete opposite of what I thought this matchup was going to be coming into the season. That doesn't mean that they can't run the ball and their offensive line's not impressive. It's just more about, okay, A&M's got a little bit of something extra to it. So it should be strength on strength based on, what A&M has looked like the first couple weeks and then what Notre Dame should look like. But Notre Dame didn't look like Notre Dame in the first game, which is the big problem. They look like some team that I can't recall, to be honest with you, with how they played in the passive nature in which Chris Ash put that game plan together. It was very frustrating, but hey, it is what it is, and here we are. What are you going to do about it? And so I'm looking forward to seeing this matchup, Trev. This is going to be this is the more intriguing matchup because other than the tackles playing poorly, there were things that happened in that opener which I wasn't surprised by. CJ Carr didn't always make the perfect decision. The offensive line wasn't perfectly in sync in the opener in the run game. Turned it over on a sloppy field. Okay, I don't like it, but I don't think that it's like, hey, I don't think the offense is going to be good this year at 9 of the 11 spots. The tackle thing concerns me. This one is more interesting because I'm much more concerned about the Notre Dame defense than I was going into the Miami game. Because everything that made them good, that would make me feel good about this matchup, they weren't in the opener, which makes this much more let me pull up the numbers of this particular matchup. And this makes this a much more concerning matchup for me, Trevor. And if you look at like the Notre Dame numbers, for example, Notre Dame gave up 339 yards, 5 yards of play, 27 points. They did not allow a single play of more than 30 yards, and they only allowed 2 plays of 20 yards or more because they were just getting pushed and nickel and dime. People say, wow, they did good running the football. Kinda. The numbers look great, but every time A&M, well, not every time, a lot of the time when A&M needed 2, they got 3. If A&M needed 1, they got 2. And they had a couple stops, but that was more of the concerning thing. And then the lack of aggressiveness, no turnovers, 1 sack, 1 run game tackle for loss, just an overall lack of looking like what made you good. everything that Chris Ash said, I'm not here to, do this. I'm not here to change things. I'm here to run the Notre Dame defense. That's not the Notre Dame defense. I mean, technically, whatever you choose to do is the Notre Dame defense, but that looked like something that was unrecognizable to what the Notre Dame defense should look like. So you gave us the coach speak, and then what you think this defense should be didn't work. So it's time to do a quick change and go back to what you are. And it doesn't require everything they've been doing since the spring. It's like we saw this in the spring, in fall camp. I know people that were at practices and they're like, yeah, what I saw in the game on Sunday night was not what I saw in practice. So you got to make some real quick changes. And at the end of the day, this goes down to Marcus Freeman. What this defense should be. This is your team. This is your defense ultimately. You better go have a come to Jesus conversation with your defensive coordinator and say, hey, man, I don't want to see that Drake Bowen and Kingston and Jaden Osbury react stuff all game anymore. I want to see those guys attacking. I don't want to see you using an athlete like Donovan Heinisch to go base, head to head against Armaj Reed Adams, who's 330 pounds all game, or Chase Pasantis, who's over 320. We're not going to do that anymore. If I see more than 5 snaps of Leonard Moore playing off cover 3, we're going to have a conversation. Your headphones may go out, and I may have to call the game. I'm serious. You need to have that kind of conversation. This is not who we are. We didn't recruit these athletes at linebacker to play that defense. We did not recruit these athletes at cornerback to play that defense. You're going to go zone when they're spread out, but then you're going to go man when they bunch? Who does that? Who does that? So those things need to get fixed now. And for the people Al Golden didn't give up 27 points in the game till the 10th game of his first season. He gave up 21 to CJ Stroud in Ohio State in the opener. If Chris Ash would have held Miami without CJ Stroud to the same amount of points that Al Golden had Ohio State to in his first game with CJ Stroud and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka and TreVeyon Henderson, then Notre Dame's 1-0. I mean, if you'd have held him to the same amount of points he gave up to Marshall, they're 1-0. Or Cal, they're 1-0. Or BYU, they're 1-0. Or Stanford, they're 1-0. Yeah, this is not like it was when Al Golden was here at Notre Dame. And it's got to get fixed quick. The good news is, Trev, it can get fixed.
No, it absolutely can. And it's tough to balance what we saw in week 1 and knowing that there's an entire season of development for players and coaches alike for it to happen. But that's kind of what's at stake, though. Brian, you alluded to it. It's if you don't make the changes in back-to-back top 20 matchups, both of them in primetime, there's nothing that's going to give me confidence that they're going to fix it for when they're on the road against Arkansas or for when they host NC State or for when they host USC at home at night. So these are things that big picture is what is at stake. Now, looking at it in a positive light, to your point, Brian, those things can be fixed relatively easily because similar to the conversation on the offensive line, or it's not like they don't have the talent to get better. Defensively, we know the level of talent that's on this defense. Raved about it for 3 months in the offseason. From the end of the spring game until the start of fall camp and then all throughout fall camp, raved about how long and how fast and athletic and how instinctive this defense was. I've gone back and I've watched the Notre Dame-Miami game now 3-4 times. And the defense looked uncomfortable. And a lot of people alluded that to, well, it's, first game for Chris Ash, getting used to the system. I think they were uncomfortable because they were handicapped. I think they were uncomfortable because they were asked to do things that don't play into the strong suit of what makes them great players. Christian Gray, Leonard Moore, Drake Bowen, and Don Schuler. And I think we saw the result of that on the field. Everybody goes back to that double move touchdown by C.J. Daniels where Don Schuler played that horribly, which he did. But I'm not going to believe that under Mike Mickens' tutelage that a Don Schuler has regressed from a season ago. I think they're just being asked to do things that are uncharacteristic to the things that they did last season. Change in defensive coordinator aside, them as players at their core being asked to do things that they're not comfortable with doing. And I think that is something that can be fixed. Something that can be fixed rather quickly, especially when you factor in that they have a bye week. We're going to find all of that out on Saturday when they take on Texas A&M. But I think you summed that up perfectly at what's at stake for this defense. And ultimately, that's it. Can you establish what your identity is? Because you did not do that against Miami.
And if we see them come out and play the same way, even if they play better and maybe stop A&M, I still don't know if the long-term success is going to be there, because you're now not letting your players play to their strength. You spend all this time recruiting a long, fast, athletic defense, and you don't let them be long, fast, and athletic. And that's a concern.
Agreed. Well, Brian, let's dive into this matchup and talk about what are some of the areas where Notre Dame matches up well. In your opinion, do you think it's more of a on paper conversation?
It is.
Yeah.
It is, because we're back to what we talked about because of what we saw in the opener. If, like, you think about what they allowed Malachi Toney to do, I'm sorry, he's not as good as Casey Concepcion or Mario Craver. At least, if anything, he's as good, but younger. Like you could say, okay, he's more athletic. He was a true freshman playing his first game, and he looked like a veteran. You don't think Casey Concepcion, who's got like 160 something plus career catches already in 2 years, is going to kind of be able to run a pivot route or a crossing route with some mesh concepts? Mario Craver's off to a monster start for Texas A&M so far, Trev. I mean, he's been outstanding for them the first 2 games. So it really comes down to, if Notre Dame was playing Notre Dame football, then, dude, they'll be okay. They'll give up some yards, they'll give up some plays, but they're going to also go out there and make their plays too. This is a very different group of receivers than what we saw last year. Last year was Ja'Day Walker at 6'4", 200 plus. It was Noah Thomas at 6'6". It was bigger guys. It was Cyrus Allen, who was a shifty kind of route runner, but not a burner athlete. Now it's a bunch of guys that absolutely fit what Colin Klein does. And you know what he's done is he's coaching to that talent. He went out and got those players, and he said, hey, we're going to coach to it. First play of the season, I think it was against UTSA, was a screen pass to Casey Concepcion that he picks up a first down. First play of the season. And like they made a statement. Like, we are a different football team now. We're going to RPO you to death. We're going to run quick game. We're going to run mesh. We're going to pull and throw bubbles. I'm looking at it now. Yeah, they ran a bubble screen, just read zone, bubble screen to the backside. One-on-one, boom, there you go. And they picked up a first down on it. That's their different team. I would have throw that to Noah Thomas last year. Throw that to Ja'Day Walker last year. Like, I'll let you do that, as opposed to handing the ball off to Le'Veon Moss. It's a little different animal with Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver and Terry Bussey and guys like that this year. So they're going to have to come back out and play Notre Dame football from a coverage standpoint, because this unit is going to watch what they did against Miami and just lick their chops, saying, please play cover 3 against us all day. Please play cover 3 against us all day. And then when we go bunch, please go to man in those instances. Please go man again in those instances. So on paper, like talent-wise matchup, Notre Dame should be able to thrive in this matchup, or at least do enough to keep A&M in check. They've got a really fast group of linebackers. So when Marcel Reed gets to scrambling, they should be able to chase him down for minimal gains if they're disciplined, if they're playing hard, unless they're letting guys come up and block them as easily as they allowed Miami's guys to block them. So it's similar to the last matchup, Trevor, which is we've only got one game of evidence of Notre Dame now. We can't point to last year because they didn't look anything like last year. We can only point to what we saw, and that's going to be a concern. And if you think Miami's offensive line was a problem with their size, A&M, their offensive line across the board, left to right, 6'6", 319, 6'5", 315, 6'3", 322, 6'5", 325, 6'7", 336. Like, so you better know how to use your players, and you better let them attack. They're bigger than you. They're stronger than you. You're faster than they are. Use that and let them go. So yeah, Trev, when you talk about it, you know, I do think this is a thing where what we saw on film, this is a matchup that favors Texas A&M. What we think that Notre Dame's capable of, this is a matchup where I think Notre Dame can have some success using their athleticism, using their size. I think the tackles for Texas A&M are good football players. I think Notre Dame has the kind of edge athleticism to give them some problems in the pass game. But can you do that while also maintaining pass lane discipline so that Marcel Reed doesn't turn a clean edge rush into a step into the pocket or step out of the pocket type of thing? And we'll get into, that'll be one of the keys to the game tomorrow will be how to handle him. And we'll dive into that. But, use your athleticism, use your speed. And if you can do that, then Notre Dame should be able to keep A&M in check. And if they don't, then they won't. I mean, we've seen Notre Dame play against Casey Concepcion when he's a freshman, when he's a freshman All-American, and they completely shut him down because they were aggressive with him. They took away the 24. They took the quick game stuff away and just didn't let him do a whole lot. You let him get free releases and start getting into his routes and running screens where you're coming from 7-8 yards off the ball, he's going to have a much bigger day. And that's why I say get back to playing Notre Dame football, and they should be able to. A&M's going to get theirs. Like I said, I'll be shocked if this is a game where Notre Dame holds A&M to 13 points or less like they did last year. I'll be shocked. I think this is a more dangerous Texas A&M offense than it was last year. If you held them to 20 points, 21 points, you've done a pretty good job, in my opinion, against what I think is going to be a much better A&M offense this year. But we'll see if they can do it. And if you do hold them less than 20 points, then you did a heck of a job, and I'll be very happy. Unless it's like they drop 2 post routes for touchdowns. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, there's obviously exceptions, but if Notre Dame plays well and they hold them to less than 20 points, that's a heck of a performance from Notre Dame, because this is going to be a much improved. I don't even think they played great the first 2 games and scored over 40 points in each game. And when I mean they didn't play great, the thing that I expect to be their strength was good. It wasn't great in the first 2 games. It was better against Utah State, but some of that was just they're not very good. So that's just like, they haven't even got cooking yet in the run game. This is already what they look like. It's going to be if you're an A&M fan, I got to think that you're kind of liking the potential of what you see, because you're like, dude, we know we're going to run the ball better. If Mario Craver's going for 100 a game, and Casey Concepcion's doing what he's doing, we haven't even seen Terry Bussey really get cooking yet. Whew, it's going to be a fun year for them. That's the challenge in front of Notre Dame on Saturday.
Absolutely. This receiving core, it's such an interesting matchup to talk about, because on paper, I would make the argument strongly favors Notre Dame. Leonard Moore, Christian Gray, Devontae Smith, a transfer from Alabama, Don Schuler, and then one of your 6'1+ safeties, whether that's Jalen Stroman or Luke Talich or Tate Johnson or Jadon Blair if he rotates in. I mean, look, man, at the end of the day, this is film versus paper. And I mean, right now, you go and look at what some of the lines are. FanDuel has Casey Concepcion over 41.5 receiving yards and Mario Craver over 51.5 receiving yards. And there was a clear emphasis, and you brought it up earlier, that when Notre Dame played NC State in 2023, there's a heavy emphasis to get the ball into Casey Concepcion's hands early in that game. And Notre Dame's defense did a really good job of attacking downhill and stuffing it at the line of scrimmage. 5 receptions for 24 yards. It's not a good day at the office for Casey Concepcion, and it's not because he's not a good player. It's because Notre Dame's defense played it extremely well. But the way that I look at this after watching them all on film between Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion and Terry Bussey, who's the tallest of the bunch at 6 foot tall, they kind of look like a bunch of little Malachi Tonys running around out there. And Malachi Toney ate up Notre Dame's secondary. 6 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown in their first matchup. He's a true freshman. So I'm with you. Texas A&M's offense is definitely going to be licking their chops. But again, as lethal as their passing attack has looked the last couple of weeks, I'm still concerned about Notre Dame's front 7 versus Texas A&M's offensive lineup.
Oh yeah,
that one is, and I'm not concerned about it from a talent standpoint. Again, it's the same conversation we had about the secondary. It's just how they're going to be utilized. Is Al Washington and Chris Ash going to ask 6'2", 277-pound Donovan Heinisch to go nose up with Armaj Reed Adams? Almost a consensus first-team All-American at guard. Or are you going to use him the way that he should? Are you going to ask your linebackers to continue to read and react and absorb contact from Le'Veon Moss and Reuben Owens and Amari Daniels, or are you going to ask them to fly downhill and attack? And so that's going to be something that's going to be very, very crucial. That's going to be an extremely tough matchup. But this as weird as it sounds on paper, this matchup favors Notre Dame, but the film across the board, not just secondary or just, trenches or linebacker play, Texas A&M's offense as a whole, based on film, this matchup favors them.
And what makes that a challenge, Trevor, is it's also them against UTEP and Utah State, or UTSA, Texas San Antonio, and Utah State. Whereas Notre Dame's is against Miami.
Yep.
And, varying degrees of how good Miami is, but I think Miami is a top 20 team. Notre Dame didn't play well. Miami took advantage of it and won the football game. So that also adds to it. I mean, there needs to be proper context. How would we be talking about this matchup if A&M played in week 1 against Miami on the road and then had a bye week and Notre Dame started the season off against UTSA and Utah State? We would be having much different conversations, I think, especially about the offense and the offensive line, in my opinion. I think those conversations would be very different if we were talking about Notre Dame playing two comparable opponents in the first game of the season. So first 2 games of the season. So that doesn't excuse how Notre Dame played, and it doesn't mean, everything is fine for Notre Dame. They just played a good team, because A&M's also a good team. But you have to be honest and say, look, I have concerns about how Notre Dame played, because who did we say before the season was Notre Dame's most talented opponent? We said it was Texas A&M. And so I think maybe Miami in a couple spots has a little bit more talent than I thought, but I didn't come out of that game outside of Malachi Toney thinking that, you know what, I got that wrong about Miami. They're better than I thought they were going to be. I thought, this is kind of who Miami is. If you pressure Carson Beck, he'll throw the ball up. If you don't pressure him, he's going to pick you apart. It's exactly what happened in that game. And, Notre Dame couldn't take advantage. So you can't just sit there and say, well, they played 2 bad teams, and so therefore Notre Dame's fine. No, Notre Dame's not fine. Doesn't mean they won't be fine. That's the thing, is like, it's okay to point out how bad they played in the opener, Trev, without jumping off a cliff and being like, if they don't do, come on. But you also can't just justify it away. So, they played a really good team. Yeah, they played bad against a really good team in certain areas, and they made too many mistakes in other areas. They did not play as well in this game, in my opinion, as they did last year against Texas A&M. Defensively. Offensively, in certain spots they did, but in a couple very important spots they didn't. They ran the ball much better against Texas A&M last year. They scored more points than they did last year against A&M, but they didn't move the ball as well as they did against Texas A&M last year. And so that's a concern. But Notre Dame will clearly, obviously, be a much different test for Texas A&M. But this is a confident football team that's now had 2 games to work some stuff out where Notre Dame hasn't. And so the coaches are going to have to do a great job defensively to work out some of these kinks in practice. I did like the fact that Marcus Freeman said, at least in week 1 of the bye week, they did good on good. I think that was smart. That was very smart. And I don't think that that was an overly pleasant good on good period either. I would imagine there was a lot of butt chewing, and at least I would hope. That's maybe me projecting what I hope happened. But at the end of the day, you've got opportunities here to go thrive. Now you've just got to go make those plays and just the mistakes that were there, make those plays. Because if you pressure Marcel Reed, he'll be similar to Carson Beck in that he'll throw some balls up. And there's a couple plays. He ran a tight end dig route, hit a tight end dig route in that game against UTSA, where it's like, if that's against a good defense, that's probably getting picked by that robbing safety. Like, he fit it right between 3 guys. Is he going to do that against Notre Dame? I don't know. I'd be a little concerned about that. I'm just concerned, but the concern I have, however, for the Notre Dame side is, will Chris Ash play aggressively enough to do that? Or will he get into we're going to spy, we're going to play off, we're going to play zone to make him read things. That's my concern. There's got to be a mix, but it's got to be about being aggressive. Make Marcel Reed beat you throwing the ball down the field, not beating you with short to intermediate throws. Carson Beck went 4 of 10 on throws beyond 10 yards past the line of scrimmage last week. 4 of 10. They got picked apart quick game, short throws that were being caught 3 to 5 yards past the line of scrimmage and going for 15. That can't happen in this game. And if you play off, play cover 3, play cover 4, they're going to pick you apart with that stuff as well. You've got to be more aggressive with your structure. And then when they motion a bunch, then you check to a zone and prepare for that. But when they just play you base and play you straight up, which they do a lot, then you've got to have a better plan for what they had last week. That's going to be the key. I don't know if he's going to do that or not, but that's what's needed.
And for the love of all things holy, if you're going to run zone, please make sure that somebody accounts for the running back coming out of the backfield for the love of all that is holy. But
Miami missed some opportunities with that.
Sure did.
Against Notre Dame. Absolutely.
Sure did. Brian, when we look at this matchup as a whole, when you look at Notre Dame's defense, who are some of the players that have to shine or win their respective matchups?
Well, I think the big thing is up the middle. You're going to have to be better more consistently than you were last week. Yes, A&M's going to want to throw the ball and do all that. I think that was more A&M knowing in the first two games that's the part of their game that needed work. I think they know they have faith that they can run the football. I think the first two games were, hey, we know we can run, but we've got to be more balanced. Let's work on our pass game. Let's get that part of our offense going. And they did. Now I think, however, you're going against Notre Dame, I think we're going to see them go back to, yes, we're going to do both. But it's kind of like I said when I joked yesterday, I think Mike Elko probably had a little bit of a conversation with Colin Klein after the first game, and that's why they came out 12 personnel the first drive of the game and just kind of ran it right at Utah State. But in all seriousness, they're going to, in my opinion, they're going to come out and look to establish a run game on the road. And get the Notre Dame, the fan base out of the game, quiet them down, move the chains, and then take your shots down the field. Get your second and third down, quick game stuff. They're going to do all that, but I do believe they're going to try to come out and say, hey, we've got to be able to run the football, and the interior's got to perform better, especially early. You can't take a quarter and a half to get into the game like they did a week ago. You've got to come out and stuff their run game early. Get Marcel Reed in some third and long situations, and then hopefully perform better in those third and long situations than you did last week. But the odds of that happening week after week after week, even with a poor defensive game plan, I just don't know that it's going to happen. But that's where it starts for me. And then, of course, a big part of this is if your defensive tackles aren't, there's a unique thing that you have to be against a quarterback like Marcel Reed. You want to be aggressive and collapse the pocket, but you can't be overly aggressive where you lose gap integrity or pass rush lane integrity, because that's when he steps out of the pocket and takes off running. But I don't want to it's a very interesting situation because you want them to be aggressive initially, but I don't know if your D tackles need to be the group getting a lot of sack opportunities against him. So it's a very unique situation where they have to be physical against the run, but I almost I want to keep him a little bit in the pocket more. But I don't want him sitting back there comfortable. But maybe this is a Jason Onye, Jared Dawson, Gabriel Rubio game a little bit more than a Donovan Hinish game on first and second down, because you don't want a guy shooting gaps to get to the quarterback, because if that guard rides him outside, that's when he steps into the pocket and goes. So there's going to have to be it's going to be a unique challenge for the defensive tackles, and they're going to have to perform well against a pretty good interior offensive line against Texas A&M. Like Chase Basantis is a very talented player. Armaj Reed Adams is a guy that's a preseason All-American. Mark Naboo is a very good football player, and he's healthy, and obviously he's took. Yeah, I mean, look, he was supposed to be the starter last year, but that guy started almost the entire season. He had to beat him out to get that job back, and he did. And I think this is a very good interior. Actually, I think that's the best part of their line, to be honest with you, is their interior against the run game. So they're going to have to thrive there. What's a matchup that you got your eye on, Trev?
The nickel corner, and I'm not putting names on it, just the nickel corner position against whoever Colin Klein decides to line up there. It could be Mario Craver, it could be Casey Concepcion, or it could be Terry Bussey. And Klein does a good job of rotating his receivers and not necessarily locking them into just one spot necessarily. I mean, you go and you look at the PFF breakdowns, Casey Concepcion has had 40 offensive snaps split out wide, and he's also had 36 in the slot. And one of my concerns is Notre Dame is going to have to do a better job of, one, figuring out what the nickel rotation is going to be, because still for reasons unknown, Devontae Smith played 37 of the 70 snaps on defense. that's got to get figured out. I don't know if it's the weather or the humidity, or it's going to be a beautiful day in South Bend on Saturday. So I don't want to hear anything about the weather and you have to workload manage people or people eating popsicles or anything like that. It's going to be perfect weather. Figure out what your rotations are. And if you are going to rotate somebody in, make sure that they are good and prepared and ready to go for whatever matchup they have, because Malachi Toney absolutely ate your defense alive out of the slot. And that's going to be one matchup that I have, because regardless of whether it is Devontae Smith or Carson Hobbs, or if they put a safety in there, they're going to have to win that matchup and do their job against one of the many players that they can fit into the slot. So that's one that I have my eye on for sure.
Yeah, the linebackers against the running backs and Marcel Reed are going to be interesting as well.
Yep.
It doesn't take a lot of breakdowns, like a lot of time to break it down, but the linebackers are going to have to be on top of their game against A&M. They're going to have to be very good at the point of attack in the run game. They're going to be guys that are going to have to be in pursuit a lot against Marcel Reed when he runs. And they're going to have to be guys that are also able to handle themselves in the pass game, because A&M will use the running backs in the pass game. If you are going zone against bunch and stack and things like that, which I think they should do, that's when you go zone. The linebackers are a big part of being serious there. So, I think that's going to be a big part of it. Is you're going to have to look up those crossers, those mesh routes. You're going to have to be the ones bracketing that. That's what was so fresh about the opener. So what I'm trying to say is this. So against Miami, when they were kind of lined up in normal spread alignments, Notre Dame did a lot of zone in those looks, and that's why they were having success. But then when they would go to like some of their bunch looks where Malachi Toney would come down and they'd run those pivot routes, we put those on the upon further review, then they'd go man. And so in order to cover a crossing route in man, you've got to flow hard over top to get to that. And then they're running a mesh. That can be difficult in man. And so then when you do have that hard inside charge, that's when he slams on the brakes, runs the pivot, and he's wide open. That's when you go zone. So basically you're passing off. You squeeze down to a point, and then once you see him go and there's somebody coming, then you sink and you take that guy. So you almost pass it off, and then you've got the linebackers kind of driving on any quick crossers and things like that. So I think those are things that they put them in bad situations in that game. You're going to have to be smarter as coaches, but the linebackers playing well are a big reason why you're going to have success in this game against those things. You're going to have success stopping the run. You're going to have success with Marcel Reed. It's going to be Jaden Osbury and Jalen Sneed and Kingston and Drake Bowen all being great in pursuit, but then also not over pursuing in that he's still 4 yards behind the line. You give up your coverage responsibility, come flying downhill, and then he drops one over your head. They're going to be a big part of this game. Linebacker play is going to be a big part of this game. And the matchup could be against running backs, tight ends, quarterbacks, whoever. It's got to be a big week for the Notre Dame linebackers, Trevor.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. Ryan, any final thoughts on Notre Dame's defense?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more I want to say about this matchup, Trevor. And
yeah.
This is kind of where I want to spend the last segment of this before we go to the mailbag. I don't like doing hyperbole. Like I don't like doing that's why we don't do headlines on our YouTube page that are like these breaking this or can you believe this at Notre Dame and some of these like really clickbaity headlines, and then you're like, this guy's regurgitating like everything that's been reported by the Notre Dame beat all week. But he uses this really clickbaity title to make it think there's this breaking news. Like I hate that stuff. Like this is the reality. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to Lou Holtz you and act like this game against Purdue is the biggest of the season and the toughest team that you're going to play. You know, the joke that his former players would say is like, I mean, we hated Navy week. We loved it when we were playing like Miami or USC or Michigan because, you know, those were kind of normal weeks for Coach. He already knew how big the game was. It was those weeks we're playing some team that's not very good that he was terrible. It was so hard on us and so demanding. But this is. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. This is a giant. I'm trying to think of the right word. This is a monumental game for Marcus Freeman in Notre Dame. Monumental game. And I think this is the side of the ball that has me most concerned. On the offensive side of the ball, there weren't a ton of structural things that I saw. It was execution. It was, not doing this, not doing that. But overall, it wasn't like, what were you trying to do? On defense, it's everything you were trying to do was head scratching to me. And are you going to be different than your predecessor who needed 2 whole seasons and then a loss to Texas and Duke in the beginning of year 3 before he was finally forced to get rid of a terrible defensive coordinator? Or can you make the change beforehand? Or is Chris Ash not Brian Van Gorder? And that's what people keep saying. And I don't think he's as bad as Brian Van Gorder. I'm just saying the first game was pretty bad. Does he make the adjustments without Marcus Freeman to tell him to? What I hope is that after this game, I talked to sources of mine. They're like, yeah, Ash was really pissed after that game. He owned it. He came in and they made changes. That's the best case scenario for Notre Dame. Not Marcus Freeman went in there and had to tell him to do that. Because that tells me he didn't think that was wrong or a bad idea. He just thought, we got to execute better. No. Yes, you have to execute better. No, that wasn't your biggest problem. They shouldn't have been learning all these new things to begin with because you tried to fix something that wasn't broke. You got handed a brand new Ferrari and like, let's pop the hood and start messing with stuff. Like, that's what you did. You took a brand new Ferrari with 3 miles on it and you said, let's tinker with this. Let's put her in the old garage and start working on it. Like, why? It's a freaking Ferrari. It's good to go. Get in it and drive it real fast. And so I want to see those things changes happen now. And if we don't see a significant change, even if they win the game and they just execute better within his system, I'm going to be concerned about that. Because now you're just out talenting people. You're not actually doing things you're going to allow you to be successful when you play a better team. Or Texas A&M's a good football team. They're capable of beating you. They're not Ohio State. They're not Oregon. They're not the elite of the elite right now, in my opinion. I think they're a playoff team. They're a potential playoff team, but they're not a team that, in my opinion, is going to go out there and make a 3-4 game run and win it all. They're not that kind of team. They're not Notre Dame. So you can lose this game if you don't play your game, but you could also still kind of do that and make a couple of those plays that you didn't make in the last game. And still win, and then it's like, oh, everything's good. No, it's not good. This is exactly what, and I hate using this example because he's not Brian Van Gorder. But Trev, back when Van Gorder was first getting started, I used to tell people, guys, this isn't good. Oh, you're a hater. And then, like, no, it's not good. I'm just telling you, when teams get some film of this, there's some very unsound things happening. They're going to figure this out and go at them. And that's exactly what happened. I said the same thing when John Tenuta took over at Notre Dame. Remember that first game in 09? I think it was 09. Was it 08? And they went out and just shut Colin Kaepernick and Nevada down, just dominate. I'm like, dude, this was not a good game. Oh, you're just a hater. They dropped like 8 passes. Nevada did. Like, there was unsound stuff. I was like, when teams get a read on this, it's going to be a problem. And it happened real quick because they made Tate Forcier look like John Elway like a week later. Like, there were some things in there that, like, dude, even if you fix this and it works because you're really talented, this isn't who you should be. This isn't an NFL team. These aren't NFL defensive linemen. They're college players with the talent to eventually be NFL players, but they're not that right now. Go back to letting them fly around, attack, be fast, be physical, be aggressive, take the fight to the team. Get rid of this read and react stuff. To get rid of this NFL. That's not the NFL stuff that I want to see. And so even if they do that and they win, Trev, I'm concerned about whether or not this team can reach their full potential. I want to see a transplant happen this week when it comes to defensive philosophy. And if they do that, then they can win this game and look good doing it. And then we're having a much different conversation in the post-game show next week. We're like, look, guys, the opener was just that, the opener. They were sloppy. They thought they could do some things. They got it fixed, and they got it fixed quick. And this is what a good coaching staff does. They thought something was going to work, worked in the spring, whatever the case may be. Maybe they thought it was good, and it didn't work out. They made a quick adjustment, and then, bam, you're good to go. And we're rolling, and Notre Dame's 1-1, and they're in the top 10, still in the top 10, and we're feeling really good going into the Purdue game, right? That's where we can be. That's where we can be. But if we don't see the adjustments, schematic adjustments, philosophical adjustments, even in a win, I still may have some concerns. Because like I've always said, Trev, it's not just about whether you win or lose. It's about how you win or lose. And this is a talented enough team to go out there and play a crappy system and still just have better players than your opponent. I don't know if you can do that against Texas A&M, but there's a scenario in which you could, especially if your offense comes out there and lights it up. That's where I'm at. That's how big this game is for me. Is Marcus Freeman's at a bit of a fork in the road. They're a hot program. He's the hot coach. The recruiting is on fire. There's a lot of things going well for this program. But if you're not willing to look in the mirror and say, yep, that ain't it, then all of a sudden, maybe you drop a game or you lose some momentum, or even if you win, you're just not that team. This is a big game for them in that regard. And I don't mean to overstate it. I don't like the hyperbole. I don't like and it's not like if they don't win, Freeman's 10 years over. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is, though, is they're going to have to then make even bigger adjustments. And then now the win back the crowd type of thing is going to take way longer, because I don't know what that win on your schedule is that makes people realize you've righted the ship until the postseason, which is going to be much tougher to get into when you're 10-2 and you lost to the two best teams you played potentially. Or if USC is as good as some people think they're going to be, then you lost to two of your three best opponents. I don't know that that's a playoff resume. That's no different than what Miami had last year when they got left out of the playoffs. And that's how now it's okay. Now you've got to rebuild because like it takes a long time to build up your reputation, Trevor. It takes one bad game for it all to come crashing down. It takes one bad discussion. You have a relationship, right? And it takes a long time to build that trust in that relationship. It can take one bad mistake and the trust is gone. The relationship is ruined, right? I mean, that's how it is, especially in a media world where tearing people down is what sells. People that have been Marcus Freeman's the greatest ever will quickly turn on him and tear him down if they feel like if they smell like blood in the water. Quickly do that because it sells. And as we saw from the past coach, one bad hire, and it's seen in the chat, one bad hire can completely ruin all the other things that you had. Notre Dame had, in my opinion, Notre Dame in 2011 had a national championship contending roster. I've said this a million times, but you had a terrible offensive coordinator. You had some position coaches that weren't in the right place. You were in a new program. It is what it is. You fix it. Then you go to 2015. That absolutely was a national championship contending roster. Were they the best roster in the country? Maybe, maybe not. You could argue Ohio State might have had the best roster that year. But why did that team lose 3 games and lose to every single good team they played? Because Brian Kelly made a terrible hire in 2014 and refused to fix it. Now, I'm not saying Marcus Freeman made a bad hire, and it's a apples to apples conversation. But what I'm saying is not righting the ship can cost you an opportunity to be a championship caliber team. Not being willing to look in the mirror and say, we got to fix this and fix this quick is more of what I'm talking about. It's not Chris Ash equals Brian Van Gorder. That's not the comparison I'm trying to draw, even though it may sound like it because I'm talking about Brian Van Gorder being the problem. I'm more so saying, can you look in the mirror and realize that what we thought was going to work isn't going to work? Let's fix it and get back on track. That's more of what I'm going to. Or are you going to be stubborn and keep trying to, pound a square peg into a round hole? And then it just keeps popping up. That's the question that we're going to get answered this weekend. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't. But that's what we're going to learn about this football team this weekend, Trevor, are you the kind of coach that's got the conviction to do things a certain way, but also the intelligence, and I don't even want to call it humility, because it's not humility. It's the intelligence and the lack of ego, because I think having humility and a lack of an unhealthy ego are not the same thing. Having an unhealthy ego says, screw it, we're going to keep doing it because I made the decision and I don't want to admit I'm wrong. We know what that's like. We had a coach like that at Notre Dame for over a decade. But more so say, man, I was convinced this is going to work, but it's very clear now that it's not going to work. Let's go back to who we are. Or, hey, yeah, it's cool that we're going to be more zone teams, but we can't lose our soul. Yes, be better at playing zone. Don't lose your soul to get there. So that's what we're going to learn about Coach Freeman this weekend. And that's what we're going to learn about Chris Ash this weekend on defense is, can you right the ship, or do you need a second loss before you finally figure it out? And that's what I think is at stake this weekend, Trevor, and why I think this is bigger than just matchups and stats and all that other kind of stuff. This is like, dude, we're going to find out who this staff really is. And it starts at the top. I mean, this isn't on Al Washington. This isn't on Mike Mickens. This is on Max Bulla, Mike Brown. It's not even really on Joe Rudolph directly. It's on the leadership of this football team. Marcus Freeman, Chris Ash, Mike Denbrock saying, this isn't good enough. And just tweaking a couple things isn't good enough. You could have tweaked a couple things and beat Miami. It still doesn't change the overall concerns and issues that need to be addressed to make sure that it doesn't happen when you play Ohio State, when you play Oregon, when you play Texas, when you play the best teams in the country. And that's what we're going to find out if Marcus Freeman's able to do that after what we saw. Like, how there comes a point in time, Trev, where sometimes when you can kind of put blinders on and you can get so your desire to say screw you to the criticism can get to the point where it can blind you, and you double down on bad decisions because you don't want to admit to the loud, raucous, crowd that you were wrong. I'm not saying that's happening with Mark Freeman. That's just a general thing. And you have to be willing to do what's right, even if it's people who you don't necessarily like or respect, being able to say, see, I told you so. It's not even about that. It's like, you don't care. You're doing this because it needs to be done, not because Brian Driscoll complained about it on his podcast for 9 straight days, not because this art person wrote an article about it, not because these people on Twitter are losing their minds. No, you don't do it because of them, but you've got to make sure that you don't make changes that you need to make because of them or because of your reaction to it. And that can happen in coaching. You may seem like that sounds like, no, it can. Like last year, Notre Dame players got mad at all the criticism they got from fans. And so they kind of turned it into, forget that. We're going to go do this. And it's about us. And okay, cool. If that's what you need to motivate you, fine. And they made changes and they used it as fuel. That's fine. I don't love the fact that, okay, it's not the fans' fault that you played like crap against Northern Illinois and Miami, Ohio. That's not on them. That's on you. But if you want to blame them and get mad at them, cool, go for it. As long as it causes you to do what? What did they do after that, Trev? They changed. So whatever the fuel was, if you want to say, I'll go show that moron and then you go do this or do that, fine, whatever. As long as you make the corrections, I don't care. So, yeah. And I get so sick of this response. Like, you can't blame this guy because the players made. Yeah, you can. Whose job is it to teach the players how to play a technique? Whose job is it to get the players to execute at a higher level? It's the coaches. Well, the coach taught it perfectly, and they both screwed it up? Really? No, this is on the coaches. When players fail, that's on you as a coach. 100%. Fix it. Don't put Luke Talich in a situation where he's playing deep third at the 20-yard line. Who taught him that? Or who taught him a different technique but didn't do a good enough job to where you knew he could do it? And why are you asking Luke Talich, of all people, to play that to begin with? That's the guy you think is best to play deep middle of all your safeties? That's your best center field option? That's on them. So you can try to judge, because I know there's certain people in the chat that just like to take arbitrary positions. Like, I just want to disagree. So let me just say this. That's on the coaches. Well, who put him in the game? Who made the call knowing he was in the game? Why are you playing off there anyway? Why are you playing cover 3 anyway at the 20-yard line? Whose decision is that? Who thought playing read and react with the linebackers? Is that Luke Touch's fault? No. That's got to get fixed. And it's so lazy to just say, oh, it's this guy's fault. What's Anthony Knapp supposed to do? Hey, coach, man, move me in the guard, dude. I can't play left tackle. No. He's going to give you his best effort. And it may not be good enough. But you're the one that keeps putting him out there. You're the one that made the decision to say, I know this defense worked great the last 2 years, but we're going to go ahead and change it because I like to do this. No, that's on you. That's on you. Fix it. And then I'll praise you like crazy because that's what good coaches do. Mike Denbrock did that last year. He was trying to run an offense early in the year for a quarterback he thought he had. And then realized, I don't have that quarterback. So let's fix it. And he fixed it. Hopefully, Chris Ash will be able to do that. Now, it took Mike Denbrock 4 games to figure it out, but that's partly because he didn't have Riley Leonard all spring. Can't use that excuse for Chris Ash. So he's got to fix it. He's capable of fixing it. Chris Ash didn't get here to this point in his career by being an idiot and not knowing football. But sometimes I think this is what I believe in defensively can kind of blind you to, yeah, but that's not who we have. Or we can eventually get there, but let's do it in increments, not just change the whole thing. And that's the mistake that was made. And they can fix it quickly. And they can go out this weekend and fix it. And if they do, I'm going to be fired up. And I'm like, let's roll. This team is going to be what we thought it was. If they don't, even if they win in an ugly game, yeah, you won because you have better players. But you may not have better players when you play Ohio State. Not to the degree that you might against Texas A&M. You may not have better players when you go play Georgia. You may not have better players to the same degree when you play Texas or Oregon or teams like that. That's what you got to change. That's where it is. And so that's kind of my thing on this defense, Trev, is I want to see that. I want to see them come out and be more who they are. That's going to be the key.
Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it for part 2 of today's show. But make sure you don't go anywhere. We do have a mailbag to wrap up today's show. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, whichever streaming platform you listen to us on. We'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here at Irish Breakdown is subscribe to the premium message boards. See it scrolling down there at the bottom of the screen. Brian's talked about some of the film breakdowns he has going on there. All of our season content is going to be on there. The game week content for Texas A&M is up on the board in a pinned thread. You find all that inside of the Champions Lounge at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, to wrap up today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, we have a mailbag today. And as always, you guys know what to do. Put MB for mailbag. Lets us know to set these comments to the side, where you can put a little mailbox emoji as well. And super chats get bumped up to the top. And I believe we have a couple of those, by my memory serves me correctly. Super chat from Bobby Jesus Follower.
Man, coming in hot.
Reeves. Oh, boy. Thank you for the super chat, Bobby. I don't take Driscoll seriously anymore. Since he said strawberry Pop-tarts were better than cherry. Blasphemy. Go Irish. Praying for you and Ange.
Appreciate you, Bobby. I think you heard me incorrectly. Cherry Pop-tarts are my favorite Pop-tart, so you must have misheard me or misunderstood what I said. I love strawberry Pop-tarts. I love cherry Pop-tarts, but cherry Pop-tarts are my favorite. You could ask Angela at a tailgate, what's Brian's favorite Pop-tart? She'll say cherry. So I've been accused of blasphemy that I didn't even say. I did not blaspheme in this instance, Bobby, because cherry Pop-tarts are my favorite. So I did say sometimes I'm in the mood for a strawberry Pop-tart more than cherry, but cherry Pop-tarts are my favorite Pop-tarts. I don't need any Pop-tarts now because I'm trying not to eat that kind of mess. But cherry Pop-tarts are my favorite Pop-tarts. So you can apologize for calling my Pop-tart takes blasphemous. And you can go back to taking my football take seriously now that we've corrected this misunderstanding there, Bobby. So I appreciate that. So now we can go back up to the top, Trev.
From Aiden Benami, have you heard if there is a solid rotation between Lambert and Absher, or is it dependent on how they each play as the game goes on?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, they have not told us that. And I don't know if the plan against Miami was Lambert plays the first half and Absher plays the second half. That's kind of what it seemed like. Or if this is more of just Joe Rudolph kind of just, throwing things up against the wall and hoping it sticks. And I honestly don't know. I've said this before. I have no problem playing a rotation at guard. That is not a problem to me. As long as you have a plan, it's been clearly communicated to the players, and you then carry that plan out in the game. That's fine. I can live with that. That's all I ask for. Just have a plan, practice that plan, and then everybody knows what to expect. Like 2027, we talked about this, or 2017, they rotated the right tackles. They had a rotation all year, every game, all year. But they all knew what the rotation was. Kramer, Hainsey would rotate every series. Unless they were in a 2-minute drill, then they would go with Robert Hainsey. Or if they were in a 4-minute drill, meaning they want to run the ball, slow the clock down, when you've got a lead late in the game, 4-minute drill, take your time, run the football, grind the clock out. Then they go with Kramer. But they all knew it. And then Coach Eastham would let them know before this, hey, by the way, we're 2 minutes, so just, Robert's in. You don't assume they know it. You communicate it, but that's what it is. Everybody knew it. Not just the two players, but then also that season, Alex Bars always knew who was going to be in with him in the next series. He knew it's going to be me and Tommy next series, or it's going to be me and Robert the next series. There was clear understanding of what it was, and it worked. It worked great. They were, Joe Moore Award winners and had 6 or 7 straight games with over 300 yards rushing, or it was like 7 out of 8 or 8 out of 9, something like that, because they went for 188 against Michigan State, and then so it was like after Georgia, they had like 500 against BC, and then 188 against Michigan State, and then just like 300 like the next 6 or 7 games until they got to Miami. So, but they knew what the rotation was. So I would say that if you're just playing a guy and it's dependent on how he plays each game, that's a terrible way of going about it. Because then it's like you got a guy looking over his shoulder like, God, I hope I play well, or they're going to bench me. And that's a terrible way to go about it. And, just make a move. Who's your guy? Go with them. And if you want to play both, play both. That's basically the reality of it. So I don't know what the plan is because they haven't communicated that to us. We'll have a better idea, I think, on Saturday of what it's going to look like. Is it Gerby the guy? Is it, we'll see. We'll see.
Another one from Aiden. Do you think Notre Dame needs to air it out and throw some deep balls and go routes, not force it, but draw a few up to give our guys an opportunity to make a big play?
I think, Trev, I think that's always something that they should do. I'm always a big fan of finding ways early in the game to take a shot. You've got the weapons for it. Find a way to take. You got a quarterback, as Marcus Freeman made very clear, backed up what we said about fall camp. CJ will throw the ball downfield all day if you want him to, or if you let him. But yeah, find those shots, take those opportunities, and then you've got to throw the ball correctly, and then you've got to, obviously as a receiver, you got to make those plays against a team like against a team like Texas A&M. You're not going to have like giant gaps, and you're not going to throw a bunch of 4 post routes where you got 5 yards on a guy. Like, unless they blow coverage. You're going to have to put that sucker right on the, he's got a step. You got to put that over the outside shoulder, bang, catches it for 40 yards. Like, those are the kind of openings that we're going to see, in my opinion.
As long as you can protect it. As long as you can protect it, I love deep shots all day. But it starts up front.
Yep.
From Andrew Gilmore, Brian, how do you factor in first home start jitters? Starting quick with the run game and getting points should help Carr. Punt, fumble would quiet the stadium. Can't do that again.
Yeah, look, I honestly, Andrew, I don't put a lot in those things. That's about preparation. That's your job as a coach, is to prepare your team to not worry about that. You just, I mean, if you've done your job preparing the last 2 weeks, the jitters will be kind of in pregame, but when the game starts, you've kind of got them worked out. And then there are some things that you could say, hey, look, I brought this up before, Andrew, it's about Brady Quinn. Even as a junior and a senior, Brady Quinn just would come out of a game just on fire and just like super amped up and super ready to just like go make plays. But that would cause him to go out there sometimes and throw like bazookas on a 5-yard crossing route that sails over a guy's head. So you ever notice, like, a lot of times in games in 05, especially in 05, in 06, Charlie would do one of two things early with Brady. He'd either take a shot where you're taking advantage of him being amped up, or they'd come out and throw a little quick game stuff where it's like calm him down, get him into a rhythm, let him get a couple of those throws out, throw the little now screen to Samarja or Stovall, and then he settles in, and then Brady's Brady. But he would kind of come into games a little bit hot and throw like rockets on, like, Brady, chill, you don't need to throw that in cut 100 miles an hour, dude. Like, you're good. And so those are all things, Trev, that I think you could look at but that's dependent upon the player. Like, if you felt CJ went into last week like really amped up and you felt you needed to get him some quick game to get him going, that's fine. But I don't know that those are jitters as much as I'm more worried about the being a little too amped up than I am about jitters. Because I think jitters you kind of work out through pregame. By the time you get to the game, you're good to go. So, and especially having played last week in the game he played in, last week, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
No, we see that the same. It depends on the player. Do what you got to do to get them into a good rhythm. And CJ seems like somebody who's pretty poised. And the best way to get rid of jitters is just come out on the opening drive and execute.
Yeah. Yeah.
From Chief Brody, what chances do you suppose the offensive line and wide receivers both come out and play 25% better than Miami? And is that enough to win?
Is it good enough for the offense to score 27 to 30 points? Yes. And they scored 24 last week and did all those things. That's good enough for the offense to do its part for a win. I'll say that. How's that? It's good enough for the offense to do it. It's not great, but 25% improvement from the receiving corps is very good. And 25% better from the offensive line is at least solid, I would say. We'll kind of see what happens after that. But yeah, that's where I'm at. Thoughts on that, Trev?
I don't know how you gauge 25% better. Is it 25% better in pass protection? Is it 25% better in route running, getting open? It's stuff like that. Like, I think that's what's tough. But just big picture, sure, if they're 25% better in pass protection, but then it also just kind of depends on what player we're talking about. Anthony Knapp graded out at a 12. So on PFF, so is him grading out at a 40? What would that be? 25? Is him grading out at a 37 good enough for them to win? Maybe. I'm not sure. So it just depends on which way you look at it.
Sadly, we know that it is, because we saw Notre Dame win games with him blocking that way last year. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's true. It's not good, but it's true. There were games where he played that poorly last year, unfortunately, from a pass blocking standpoint. So his grade last year was a 49.2. His PFF grade was a 49.2. They beat Indiana with him blocking a 29.7. They beat Texas A&M with him blocking 35.7.
That's true.
That kind of sadly is good. They beat Georgia with him blocking 45.6. So yeah, they can win games. The Anthony Knapp is just kind of average, because they did that all last year. They shouldn't have to keep winning games because your left tackle's average.
Yeah,
that's the bar. Hey, just don't suck.
Yeah,
that's the bar.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep. Like I get what you're saying, Trevor. I get it. It's just, this is part of the problem, though.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, you say what you want to say because I know you want to say something, but like that's the whole point. It shouldn't be that way. And
yeah.
then
That's the frustrating
correct, but it's
part.
like but the reality is we've seen this before, and it's like, why do they keep doing that? But apparently there's nobody else at the University of Notre Dame O-line U in year 3 of the O-line coach that can play left tackle, apparently. Well, if Jagasol got hurt, they moved him to right guard already. Like, let's not act like Jagasol was going to be the left tackle and he got hurt again.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean the pieces are on the roster. They're just none of them are lined up at left tackle. Unfortunately, I mean those pass blocking grades were good enough when Riley Leonard was your quarterback. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
I think personnel change at quarterback. I don't know if a 35 grade is going to be good enough to win because CJ showed that he was more athletic than what other people gave him credit for. Not us. We talked about how he was a significantly more athletic player than what people thought. For whatever reason, the picture was being painted that he's Jack Cohn 2.0 and Kenny Minchie's Michael Vick. But besides the point, I don't know if a 35 grade is good enough for Notre Dame to win with this personnel at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all in the same frustration of we shouldn't be having this conversation in the first place.
I do think this quarterback is good enough to win when he blocks that way. He's just going to win differently. But we don't know that he can win that way. Yeah. So, yeah.
From Irish Gordian Knott, what are the chances they come in with contingency plans at left tackle if Knapp struggles?
I have to think that Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock aren't just sitting back saying, no big deal. We're fine. I have to think that there has to be some sort of contingency plan in case they play like they did last week. Has to be. I refuse to believe that Mike Denbrock and Marcus Freeman would allow that, even if Joe Rudolph didn't want to. I have a hard time with that, Trev.
I hope to the high heavens that you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything that we've shown, what are the chances? In my eyes, IGK, it's a 0. Because nothing that has happened has shown me, barring an injury, that they'll take him out if he struggles severely. Mm-hmm. If he plays the same way that he did against Miami and he's not hurt, until I'm shown otherwise, he's going to trot right back out there with the remainder. But here's the thing. I have no issue with him trotting back out there if he improves significantly, mind you, but if he improves. It's not the issue with Knapp as a person or as a player, but if he plays as poorly as he did, and I'll say the same thing for Emil Wagner. You're a redshirt junior captain. And if you play as poorly as you did against Miami, 59 should also not be trotting back out with the first team offense if that's the display that you're going to put on after going back and watching yourself on film and after having a whole bye week to get it right. That's where I'm at. And so not just contingency plans with Knapp, it's contingency plans at both tackles. And I have zero faith until shown otherwise that that's going to happen, as disappointed as I am to say that. And believe me, this isn't one of the situations where I hope that it plays out that way so I can sit down in the postgame show and be like, I told you guys. I hope that's not the case.
Yeah.
But until shown otherwise, there's a 0% chance that they have a contingency plan in my eyes. But I hope Brian is right. USMA 87.
It's not even about being right. It's just, I don't know. I have to think that Marcus Freeman and Mike Denbrock aren't sitting back watching that game and be like, it's all good. Just coach them up. I have a hard time believing that is possible.
Yep.
Like, so it's not about, oh no, Trev, I'm right. I know that they do. No, I don't know that they do. No one's talking this week. It's just, I just have a hard time believing that, like, I mean, these are coaches that have had a lot of success. They didn't, you know what I mean? Like, I just have a hard time with that. Like, look, I know for a fact, for example, the O-line coach last year, from what I've been told by many people, is when Billy Schrouth came back, he wanted to put Billy Schrouth back to right guard and have Sam Pendleton say left guard. And the OC and head coach said, no, we're going to leave Rocco in there because Rocco's playing really good football. I mean, Rocco Spindler at that time was probably their best offensive lineman in most games. And he wanted to bench him again to put Billy Schrouth there, who was good, to leave in the guy who was probably, as much as Anthony Knapp struggled last year, Sam Pendleton had really hit a funk at that point in time in the season.
Yeah.
And Sam's doing great for Tennessee, and Sam would be much better this year. He's a redshirt freshman. It was a tough spot for him. He battled his butt off, but he was still learning and going through, rookie mistakes and things like that. But that's what the O-line coach wanted to do, and they said, no, we're not doing that. So, we know that they're capable of saying, no, we're going to do something different. But I have to think that they have.
I hope so.
And, yeah,
I hope so, because that same head coach and that same offensive coordinator, watch how Charles Jagasaw played in the national championship at left tackle and then also gave the green light to kick him inside.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope there's a contingency plan.
Yep.
USMA 87, you only get one group to improve. Who's your top pick? O-line, wide receiver, running back, D-line, or linebacker?
O-line.
Yep.
Guys, if the O-line played good football against Miami with all the other issues, if just the O-line said, we're going to play better, we're going to play if they played to the level we think they should be playing, Notre Dame's 1-0, and they win convincingly, 7 to 10 points where they're clearly the better team. And if everybody else plays the exact same way, now that doesn't make it okay. That doesn't mean it's all right that the defense did what they did or the receivers did what they did or whatever the case may be. It just means that's how important that group is, and that's how bad they played as a whole. Now, again, it wasn't everybody. I thought the center and left guard played pretty good football.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Sullivan and Gerby had 3 or 4 really bad snaps, but there was also a lot of really good snaps from those two, especially Gerby in the run game. So, but you still win that game. You might have even gone down the field and scored if you could have 5 guys could stop 3. I mean, that's still ridiculous. Still freaking ridiculous. But yeah, I mean they win that game if the O-line plays well. So yeah, I'm going with the offensive line.
100%. From Ray Hallcraft, please explain how the running back's footwork changed.
So they're minor things, Ray, but essentially footwork is designed to get you on target for your run path. So you have different aiming points for every time you hand the ball off. So if you're running mid-zone, most mid-zone that I know, and I believe Notre Dame's is that way, is your aiming point's the inside hip of the play side tackle. If you're running inside zone, depending on how you teach it, it can be inside hip of the play side guard. Some teams will teach, reading more of the center because it's more of a cutback run. Outside zone is inside hip of the tight end or outside shoulder of the tackle if you're in an open side. And so your footwork is designed to get you in line to get on your track to your aiming point, but also meant to be timed up appropriately to where you're getting to the hole as it's opening. And so, for example, I coached running backs one year. We were under center inside zone team. So when we ran inside zone, it was open with your near foot, cross, roll downhill. And it was timed up in a way to where it allowed the zone blocking to either vertical insertion or cut it back, or sometimes even bounce. If the running back just opened and then got downhill, he got downhill too quickly. And so he's trying to cut back and the line hasn't really opened up the hole yet. Or if he opens, crosses, plants, then rolls, he's now getting downhill too late. So the hole may be closed or he may be off target and now he can't get to the run lane. So what was happening against Miami is the footwork, it sped everything up. It wasn't as precise as it had been last year. I'd been told that there had been some footwork changes, not good or bad, just different. And what we saw was they were getting downhill too quick a lot of the time. And so that's a thing that needs to be adjusted. Now, it could be where it wasn't necessarily Jaywan Sider's corrections that were the problem, but maybe the backs were going too fast. Maybe he said, we're going to change the footwork, but you've got to delay and then go, maybe, and they weren't delaying. But the footwork definitely was getting them downhill too quickly, in my opinion. And that's how it changed. And I hope that answers your question, Wade, because I do know you asked about it a couple times. But hopefully that answers your question.
Another one from IGK. What fan ratio are you expecting in the stadium on Saturday?
It's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question.
It better be 90-10 at the minimum. Better be. But what am I expecting? No idea. I wish I could tell you. I really do.
I haven't heard a whole lot about what kind of A&M crowd's coming. I think that they're a fan base that travels well. I'm concerned when I hear about all the Notre Dame fans that are supposedly talking about, you know what I mean?
Selling their tickets.
Yeah. But I don't know how many A&M fans are planning on making the trip. In a game like this, I always assume there's going to be a larger than normal contingent of road fans, to the point now where I don't even care anymore. It's like, this is what who Notre Dame is. They don't care. So why should I care? Notre Dame doesn't care about making sure it's a real strong home environment for their team. So why should I care? Like, hey, they want to make money. It is what it is, Yeah. That's where we're at, unfortunately. So apparently USMA was trying to set us up. He said, me too. O-line will help RBs and wide receivers. Correct answer, Brian. He's trying to set us up. He's trying to see if we would answer it incorrectly, and he was going to come at us. How you like that? How you like that? Yeah.
From Archer, our resident Ohio State fan in the chat, who is the most important player to get going on Saturday?
CJ Carr. Yeah, I think if CJ Carr gets going, everybody else is cooking. Like, you could say Jeremiah Love. Okay, cool. But what if CJ Carr's not playing well? And then now they can load the box and CJ's not making good reads. He's not getting the ball where he needs to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You say, okay, well, if they come out throwing and CJ's cooking, then guess what that's going to open up opportunities for Jeremiah Love. So Jeremiah Love is your best player. He's got to be a focal point. But if it's about get going, it's CJ Carr. Because if CJ Carr gets going, everything else takes care of itself. If CJ Carr gets going, Jeremiah Love's going to have a big game. If CJ Carr doesn't get going, then Jeremiah Love may not have a good game, no matter how much they try to get him going.
Yeah.
Because A&M's going to say, well, look, your quarterback ain't going to beat us, so we're just going to load the box and stop Jeremiah Love. Make your quarterback beat us, and he's not. So that's why I think CJ Carr's actually the guy to get going. Let's say he comes out and hits a couple shots down the field early. Well, now your whole game plan for stopping Jeremiah Love is out the window. And so that's absolutely where it is for me. And it doesn't have to be like bombs, like I'm saying shots. I'm just making a point, but it can be chain moving stop routes. It can be a backside dig. It could be getting them going in the screen game, slip screens. And some of that could include Jeremiah Love. I mean, there's no reason that getting CJ Carr going early doesn't include him getting the ball to Jeremiah Love in those situations.
Yep.
But it's at the end of the day, this is a different offense than what we had last year for Notre Dame. And this one is going to require their point man, the quarterback, to be a good distributor. And if he's distributing the ball well, the offense is going to cook. If he's not making good decisions, then the offense is going to stagnate, just like we saw in the opener.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's him.
Jason Smith, what are the roles of Mike Mickens and Al Washington as defensive pass game and run game coordinators? How do they factor in, if at all, in play calling or game planning?
I mean, look, it's very much they're going to study film. They're going to have suggestions on how we should do things. Hey, I think we should play this guy. I think we should line up this way. I think we need to handle him this way. This is what the other team is doing very well, and then make suggestions in that regard. That's the most I can tell you right now, Jason, because I don't know that I don't know much about their roles under Chris Ash as I did about their roles under Al Golden. And under Al Golden, they had a much bigger say. I mean, Mike Mickens had a very heavy say on what coverages they called going into the game and then during the game. I have no idea if it's him or not. I'm not saying like, oh, it's not Mike Mickens' fault. I'm saying I don't know. I don't know enough about him. We've only played one game. I don't know how much Chris Ash listened to them or not during the game. For all we know, we could come to find out like, yeah, Chris Ash was going with what Al Washington and Mike Mickens wanted him to do. I have a hard time believing that because of what those guys have done in the past, but he could say that. We could find that out. I guess it's possible. I don't think that it is, but a lot of it, there's going to be a lot, certainly, in the preparation standpoint of their jobs and saying, hey, here's what they do. And then when the game plan is in play, obviously they have to do a good job of making sure their units are ready to execute at a high level. I just don't know enough about the makeup of the roles on this team after one game to really have a better answer for you. Sorry, Jason.
Agreed. Jim Holleron, do you expect the defense to come out and play more aggressively and more man coverage?
I hope so. I can't say that I expect it, Jim, because I just don't know. I don't have any kind of track record with Chris Ash at Notre Dame. He's coached one game. I can't tell you. I don't know. I hope so. All I can say is I hope so.
You and me both, brother. Ray Hallcraft, specifically, what do 54 and 59 need to do to play better from a technical standpoint and just overall?
I mean, we've talked about this in shows in the past, talked about in our breakdowns after the game, upon further review. There's a lot of different things. Emil, you got to have a better base out of your stance. There were so many times when his feet would get narrow, or he would cross his feet. He's leaning back. He's sinking his hips. He has no base. But that comes down to footwork. It's like his arms are balancing his feet. And that's why it looked like he was doing jumping jacks. So it's really that. With Anthony Knapp, it's not so much a technique thing. He just is not comfortable in space. He's just not. He doesn't have a great feel on how to get out to an edge rusher. He doesn't have a great feel on how to use his hands when engaging a pass rusher. He doesn't anchor very well against bull rushes. And why is because he's very good against bull rushes when it's tight. You saw that in the game on Saturday when a guy was lined up right on his face and came right at him. And Anthony, I thought, stoned the guy pretty well. Guy comes off the edge. He's got to sink more. He doesn't have as good of a feel for here's the move he's making on me. Let me do this. He's late with his hands a lot, getting out to guys. He's just not comfortable in space. He's a very different player when he's playing in tight quarters than when he is and he's out on an island. Very different player. And with Emil, I don't know what he was doing at the time. That was just not the Emil Wagner we're used to. Run game, he was leaning forward too much. They were just throwing him to the ground with ease. It was amazing how easily he got thrown to the ground in the run game multiple times because he's losing all of his base. He's not bending at his knees. He's leaning forward, and they're just chucking him and getting to the ball carrier. I still don't know what he was doing.
It's plays like that make me go back and think, was the additional weight a little bit too much for him to handle?
Yep. It's fair. Fair.
Michael Cannon, Coach D, Mailbag. How concerning is it to you that Marcus Freeman doesn't seem to see the issue about line play as we do?
We have no idea if Marcus Freeman sees it that way. We talked about this yesterday. You're assuming that because he said something in a show, an interview, a press conference, that's what he believes. Trev knows what I've been told over the last week. I don't think that what I'm told about how practice has gone matches up very well with what Marcus Freeman said at the press conference. But we have a long track record of Marcus Freeman not throwing players in the bus. I shouldn't even say that because being critical is not throwing them under the bus. They have a long track record of Marcus Freeman defending his players and spinning things in a positive way in the press conference. And then we hear other things behind the scenes. And then we, see things happen differently in games. We see him say, oh no, this guy's doing fine. And then we go out in the game and that guy's not playing as much. Well, okay. Well, he said in the press, of course he's going to say that in the press conference. He's not going to come out and say, yeah, Anthony Knapp had a really bad game. And if he doesn't play better, he's going to find himself on the bench. He's not going to say that. But just because he doesn't say that doesn't mean that's not what he thinks. I don't know that he thinks that. He could think that. He could think Knapp was great. He could think something in between. I just don't think that we should be concerned about what he said right now because, the press conference kind of went exactly how I expected it to go. I don't care about that. I want to see what happens on Saturday.
Uh-huh.
And why should he dictate to Texas A&M, hey, guys, here's what we're going to do different? Oh, so we feel like we got to help Anthony. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide our protection this way. We're going to chip with this guy. We're going to have our running backs help here. We're going to try to bootleg those aggressive edge rushers and maybe sprint out a couple times and maybe bring a tight end down to crack on that guy so we can get outside. That's what we're going to do on Saturday because we don't feel like we have a left tackle to go to since Charles is out and These other guys are too young. So hey, Mike, and Jay Bateman, it's Monday, so this gives you plenty of time to know what we're going to do and go. And I'm being very hyperbolic there, Michael. Obviously, I'm just saying, like, I don't care what he says in the press conference. We'll have this conversation. The time for this conversation, Michael, is if we get through the Purdue game and nothing's changed. And then it's like, okay, what he said at the press conference is what he actually feels. I'm not saying he doesn't believe what he said at the press conference. What I'm saying is I know that there's a long history of him saying things at the press conferences that are partially true or just I'm going to protect my players, and then things happen differently on the feet in the game. So I'm not saying, Michael, freaking calm down, dude. Marcus knows what he's doing. Trust me, he's got a plan. I'm not saying that because I don't know. What I'm saying is I don't care what he said at Monday. I care about what happens on Saturday. And there's a long track record of him saying one thing and then we see another thing on Saturday. Because, again, I'm not saying he's lying, but what I am saying is that you don't say certain things. If I went and asked Marcus Freeman at the press conference, hey, coach, are you guys going to do this offensively against them? And they are, why would he say yes? Because now Texas A&M knows they're going to make that change. Hey, you guys really struggle with this. Are you guys planning to make this coaching adjustment? Yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. Good job, Driscoll. I'm glad that you figured that out. No, he's like, look, man, there's a lot of things we got to get better at. That's what he's going to say. He's not going to answer my question, nor should he answer my question. You know what I'm saying? Because now you're kind of giving away some trade secrets and things like that. Mike Elko's not going to do that. Hey, coach, you struggled in the run game, week one. We can do against Notre Dame. Well, hey, we're really worried about this guy, so we're going to run a lot of twists, and we're going to, just really crash our ends a lot and then bring some loopers. We want to really put their right guard in a tough bind. He's not going to say that. Nor should he. So just because
you don't get the answer that you don't want to hear doesn't mean the issues aren't being addressed.
Right. Now, they may not be. What I'm saying is, but we don't know that from the press conference. If we go through A&M and we go through Purdue and the same stuff is going on with no changes, then we'll be like, yep, apparently they don't think that there's a problem that needs to be fixed. Or it could also be they know there's a problem to be fixed, but they just don't think the other options are better, which I would not necessarily agree with. But we'll see. We'll see.
Tristan Schaub, thoughts on the Duke-Illinois game? I thought Duke was going to make it a game till the turnover happened. Can Illinois make some waves in the Big Ten this year?
Make some waves in regard to winning the Big Ten? No. Make some waves in regard to being a Big Ten team that's battling for a playoff spot? Yeah, I think they can. And we said when we previewed the Big Ten that this Duke game was going to be one of those. There was two early games we talked about, Trev, and I think the other one is against they have an early game against Illinois, I believe, as well. Let me go look up the Illinois 2025 football schedule. So they had the Duke game in week 2, non-conference. And then, yes, 2 weeks later, they play at Indiana. Like, those are going to be those two early road games are going to tell us a lot about who Illinois is. And so I thought it was a good game. They went on the road. It's a good game early. Duke had some missed opportunities. They had a tight end drop a ball in the end zone for what would have been a touchdown, and they had to settle for a field goal. I thought Illinois was clearly the better team. I just thought Duke, the final score was not indicative of how that game played out for the most part. Like Illinois piled on pretty heavily. Let me pull up the box score. It was 45-19, but a lot of that came late in the game. So I don't want that one. 110-67, different sport.
Barn burner
basketball. So it was Illinois was up 14-13 at halftime. They were up 28-19 at the end of the third quarter. That's more indicative of how I thought the game was played out. Illinois was better, but they kind of poured it on late. And then, of course, they had the late turnover that gave them a short field that allowed them to score. But I thought Illinois was the better team. I mean, they had the early turnover that got them an 18-yard drive, but then their next three scoring drives were 75 yards, 12 plays, 75 yards, 11 plays, 61 yards in 4 plays, 57 yards in 9 plays, 89 yards in 12 plays. That's controlling the game. Like, they were the better team. Duke battled early. They were the better team. I just don't think they were 45-19 better. This is a good football team. And I don't think Illinois is cooking yet, Sean. I think their offensive, Sean and I were talking about this the other day. He was talking about their offensive tackle struggling. They're going to get better. That line's can play better. Their run game can be better. Their defense can still be better. And they're still 2-0 and had an impressive road win over a decent group of 5 or Power 5 team. So I don't think Duke's as good as their 9-3 record from last year. I've said this before, but they're still a bowl caliber team for sure. And you went on the road and beat them soundly. Again, do I think it was 45-19? No, but it was the 28-19 where they're just putting long drive together. Then they go out and, get what was that second field goal? The fourth quarter field goal made it 31-19. That to me is more indicative of how that game got played out. Like they needed to put the game away with a long time consuming drive to make it 38-19. That's more of how the game played out to me. That's a good football team. Do I think they can beat Ohio State on any given Saturday? Yes, they can beat anybody in the Big Ten on any given Saturday. Do I think they can string enough of those Saturdays to win the league? No, I don't. But I think that Illinois has a shot to be in November as a team fight for a playoff berth.
Well, like we said in the preseason, man, Illinois is going to be one of those teams that if they're in the playoff discussion going into November, they're probably going to make the playoffs. If they are out of the playoff discussion going into November, they're just not making the playoffs. So that's how I view Illinois, especially with how their schedule's put together. Jim Halloran, do you think Texas A&M will load the box to stop the run and force Carr to beat them downfield?
To a degree. I mean, they're not going to just come lining up with like 8 guys up near the line of scrimmage. They're going to come out and play their kind of 4-2-5 defense, and their safeties are going to be very active coming downhill. Their corners are going to be aggressive, trying to funnel the run game back inside. Their game plan will be very geared towards stopping the run. I think loading the box in today's era is different than it was 30 years ago, where you'd like kind of line up in like a 4-4 and just you'd have 3 or 4 linebackers in the field. It won't be that, but there are going to be a lot of looks, a lot of safeties coming down, a lot of corners funneling inside that is going to be geared, a lot of linebacker stunts that are going to be geared towards stopping the run and saying, hey, we're going to make CJ Carr and these receivers beat us. Absolutely think that'll be part of the game plan.
USMA 87. Bain was really good. Was it we made him look that way? I think he is just that strong of a player.
I think Ruben Bain is a very good player. We talked about that. We said if he gets back to his freshman form, he's going to be a heck of a player. He's not as dominant as they made him look. Like, he's not so athletic that Anthony Knapp can't even touch him 3 times in pass pro. Like, no. Bull rushing Anthony Knapp, chucking him into the quarterback, that's more Ruben Bain's game. But just coming off the edge so fast that you can't even get a hand on him 3 times, no, you did a bad job.
Yeah, I mean,
both things are true to me.
Yeah, 100%. He's not as good as what Notre Dame made him look, but he's also not as bad as what we try to rationalize. Not we, you and I, but I've seen some try to rationalize. I mean, look, we're talking about 2 offensive tackles that went up against Denai Dennis Sutton and Abdul Carter and Mikhail Kamara and the ends for Georgia. And they look significantly better in those games than they did against Ruben Bain.
Mm-hmm.
From Kevin Fetters, I know that we want to see things, but do we just accept a win?
No, you always are happy about a win. But and what I don't need to see from Notre Dame is perfect football on Saturday night. I don't need to see them. Oh man, they beat Texas A&M by 3 touchdowns and they played perfect football and made all the proper adjustments and just dominate. No, I don't expect to see that. I mean, it'd be nice, but what I also, and I think if you've followed me for a while, Kevin, you've been following me for a while on the show, is I don't just accept wins and losses and put blinders onto things. That's one of the issues I had with Brian Kelly is he would just say, hey, we won the game. Well, yeah, I know that because you played a team that's not as good as you. But when you play a team with your talent or better, you're going to be in trouble if you don't fix these things. I also don't think that it's just everything's got to get fixed in one game. There just needs to see obvious recognition of the things that got you in trouble in the opener, make those adjustments, and you're working towards becoming the team you're going to be. If Notre Dame reaches their peak in week 3, it's going to be a long year. They're just not going to reach their peak in week 3. I mean, because what that means is they have a lower ceiling than we thought that they did. They're going to hit their peak in October, November. What I want to see is progress. And if progress isn't made, but you still win because you can force a few turnovers and Marcel Reed has a bad game or something like that, or they have 3 blown coverages, then you take advantage of, but you don't fix those other things, does that really say, hey, everything's good now? Or is it you played bad, but just unlike Miami, A&M played worse? That doesn't make me happy. That doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies. I want to see progress. I don't need perfection. I just need to see progress. And that will result in a win, in my opinion. If you show good progress, you're going to win. But if you win because you're just better than A&M and A&M makes a lot of mistakes, I'll be happy about the win because now there's more time to fix the issues where your season's not over with. But I won't be sitting here in the postgame show being like, Kumbaya, my Lord. I mean, everything's not fixed now. There's still issues that got to get addressed. But hopefully but if they come out like gangbusters and it looks like a vintage Al Golden defense and CJ Carr's 20 of 25 and Anthony Knapp is just dominating Cassius out, great. That's awesome. But that's not the standard of making us happy. But just winning also isn't necessary. And this is coming from Marcus Freeman. Like, it's not just about the result. It's about playing to a certain standard. That's the key.
I'll say this though, Kevin, I definitely understand where you're coming from. Like, it's how the win looks to a degree, but I would also strongly love a win because depending on who you talk to, Notre Dame lost to Miami 50-0 and never crossed the 50-yard line. Mm-hmm. So I would also just love a win. Right now, FanDuel has them as 7-point favorites at home. So
that surprised me. That definitely surprised me that Notre Dame was a touchdown favorite. Ooh, yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. I guess they're just not putting too much weight into Texas A&M beating UTSA and Utah State, and they're putting a lot of weight in the glass half full of looking at Notre Dame's loss. So.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Gilmore, who's a better pass catcher, Jeremiah Love or Aeneas Williams?
I think Aeneas might have better hands. I think Jeremiah is the better target because he's just so much longer and faster. They're both very good. There's just certain things I think Jeremiah could do that Aeneas can't, and that's kind of how I feel about that.
Agreed. Another one from Andrew Gilmore. If Knapp were to go down, who's going in?
I mean, based on last week, it'd be Styles Prescott.
Mm-hmm.
Based on last week. I don't know of any other changes beyond that. My hope would be that, we'd see Will Black start to get some time, but since they had him playing guard for so long, I don't know if he can get that fixed in a week.
Yeah.
But my guess would be, as of right now, of what we know, Styles Prescott. I wouldn't be shocked if we see some of Will Black in the game either.
From Jason Rose, do you think we will see more freshmen play in this game? I was shocked that we only saw Mark Zachary and Madden Faramo.
No, I don't know. I don't think so. I think the goal is to kind of get through these couple games and then play some more. I don't know that I expect. I mean, I don't know what other. I didn't expect to see Elijah Burris in the opener. I guess there actually is a freshman that I actually thought we'd see play at least in certain situations that we didn't see that surprised me a little bit, and that was James Flanagan. Like, I'm shocked that they think Will Pauling it provides a better backside run blocking option than James Flanagan.
Yeah,
maybe they just want to preserve a redshirt year, I guess, but that surprised me a little bit. That did surprise me.
Agreed.
I'm actually looking to see if, like Dallas Gold didn't play special teams. They didn't even travel Jadon Blair, so they definitely went with the veterans and didn't really work out all that great.
Andrew Gilmore, based on early results, is the SEC the most competitive conference in the last 20 years?
No.
Like,
we're 2 weeks into the season. Like, no. Like, I don't know how we can answer that question after 2 weeks. The SEC looks good so far. 2 weeks in. their best team went against the Big Ten's best team and lost. Like they've got a couple wins over Virginia Tech. They got a win over an ACC team that's supposed to be the best ACC team. That was a great win. So, I mean, it's been good, but I mean, it's like we're 2 weeks in. Some of them already played each other already. I don't know that necessarily, like, I think South Carolina's looked very average the first 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
Very average. They beat a Virginia Tech team that's just not good, and they struggled with South Carolina State for a while. Did you see that? That was like they didn't pull that one away till the second half.
Yeah.
But does that mean South Carolina is going to be average all year? No, it's just it just means it's early yet. We've seen teams look great early. The win over Arizona State for Mississippi State was a great win. It was a huge win. Is Arizona State going to be that good? We don't know that. That's the whole thing. Is like it's still too early to know how good some of these wins are. It's still too early to know how truly deep it's going to be. I do think that it's going to be one of the more competitive SEC seasons, Andrew, because I don't know that there's an elite SEC team right now, partly because it's early. Say, well, what about Clemson beating or LSU beating Clemson? Great win, but how good's Clemson right now? I mean, they were down 16-0 to Troy. We don't, and LSU didn't look great against Louisiana Tech. That could simply be letdown game after big win. Yeah. There's so many what ifs that it's hard to know what's true because it's so early in the season. If you're asking me about LSU, I'd say both teams put everything into week 1, and they both had letdown games in week 2. That's what I would predict. But we don't know that till we have more data. But it is trending to be a very deep league, though, Andrew. Partially because some lower teams are better. Mississippi State's clearly better than they were a year ago. But it also because I don't know that any of the teams – Georgia's not looked great the first 2 weeks at all. Like, they scored in the 20s against Austin Peay, who I think went, like 4-8 last year in the FCS? Yeah.
It's not a big enough sample size. I mean, like, there's a team, like, a lot of people are high on Tennessee, and I get it. And people were stoked about their win over Syracuse. And then it's like, okay, well, Syracuse just had to go to overtime to beat UConn. So, like, I don't really know. I don't know what type of team either one is going to be. It's just need a bigger sample size. Has makings to be, I agree. But it's just going to depend on how the next couple of weeks unfold. Once these teams start getting into conference play, I think it'll start to sort itself out because I can't. Tennessee opened up the season against Syracuse at a neutral site and looked great and beat the brakes off of Eastern Tennessee State, A&M Abilene Christian, or whoever they played in week 2. And
wasn't it like East Texas A&M or something like that?
Yeah. So we'll see. It's just it's so hard to tell. They got Georgia this week though, so we're gonna find out. That'll be a good game.
That used to be Texas A&M Commerce is what I believe East Texas A&M University is now. But I do think that we can say it's going to be I think it's going to be a very competitive year. That's not what I'm arguing against, Andrew. It's just, it's too early for me to say it's more competitive in 20 years. That's the part that's too early to tell.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a very competitive year in the SEC, which we kind of thought it was going to be. I mean, we talked about this during the summer. We said last year the Big Ten was better than the SEC, and that's not arguable. But what we said when we did our previews of the SEC was there's a lot of ascending teams in the SEC, and we don't know if there's like that elite team.
Yeah.
We thought LSU was going to be better. We debate how much better, but we both had them in the top 15 after being unranked last year. I loved the Joey Aguilar pickup. I said I could see a world in which their offense might be better this year with him at quarterback, and your response was could be, but let's just see. Well, now we've seen, and it looks like, okay, he runs that offense pretty well. Ole Miss had a great comeback win over Kentucky at Kentucky. Well, Kentucky beat them in Ole Miss last year, and they spotted them 10 points. So, like, that was a good, hey, that showed me something. Vandy going on the road and smacking Virginia Tech, in the fourth quarter makes it say, like, okay, Vandy's going to be good again. So I do think this is going to be a really good year, a really fun year in the SEC, but we kind of saw that coming, Trev. We talked about that in the preseason. But how good, we just need to see more of it.
I was about to say, last 20 years is tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely more competitive than last year.
Yeah. Kristen Schaup. Brian, What made you wake up one day, say, screw it, start the company that we all know and love?
It wasn't something that necessarily I woke up one day. It was a series of events that kind of led to me eventually knowing I always wanted to start my own company and run my own business. I've just like when I was a coach, I always had aspirations of becoming head coach someday. It was never like, I really like this position coach thing. I just want to stay here the rest of my life. I wanted to become a coordinator. And then after that, I wanted to become a, head coach and run my own program. And same thing with my business. I mean, I enjoyed my time at Blue and Cold. I absolutely loved working with Lou Emoji. It was like someone I grew up reading as a kid for BGI, but I always had aspirations of starting my own company. And I just felt there was a certain way to do things that I wanted to, didn't want to have to answer to other people. And always kind of wanted to get out from under the umbrella of the big networks. And that's why I went to work for Maven when I did, because it was more of a, you run your own show. We don't tell you what to do. We're going to build a platform and it's your job to do it. It's not like we're answering to 24/7 national people or rivals national people. So that's kind of always my plan. And we've got some things in the works now that I'm excited about that I'm hoping we're going to be able to announce in the next week. But it was just more so of that. It was just, I always wanted to kind of be my own boss, and I wanted to do things a little bit differently and wanted to run my company a certain way and it get down to where, hey, this is going to be about me and what I believe in. And I'm going to sink or swim based on what I do. And that's just kind of how I always felt it. So it was always a matter of time. And then certain events came into play that caused me to go do it when I did it. And it's kind of where it was. So it wasn't, I just didn't just wake up one day and get pissed off and say, screw it, I'm going to go start my own company. It's something I've been working towards and wanting to do for a long time.
Well, I'm happy you did it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I've said this, I'm a much better boss than I am an employee. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a great boss. It just means I'm not a great employee. I know that because I'm very stubborn and very hard-headed, and I believe things should be done a certain way. And if you don't do it that way, then I'm going to let you know about it. And so, yeah, I mean, that's not going to surprise a lot of people. So yes, it's like, it's either going to work or it's not. And we're going to find out if my ideas are good or not. And there's a lot of things people told me I can't do. You can't have long shows. You can't do 3-hour shows every day. People won't listen. All right, well, cool. I just know that when I was working in my 20s, I drove around in my car all day. And at noon every day, I knew exactly what 3-hour show my radio was going to be on. I was like, I think there are still people that care about learning and debating and engaging, and not everyone just wants to, 15 minutes and they're out. Not everyone wants to consume information in only 240 characters or less. Some people enjoy the format, and that's what our crowd is. That's what we've attracted here, in my opinion. So that's what I've wanted to do, and that's what we're doing. And I'm glad that I was, to a degree at least, right. And we have built the community that we've built.
Irish in Florida, 20-plus touches for the running backs this weekend, or I'll be very disappointed. Even if you have to force feed it on occasion, they both are always one cut from a house call. Do you agree?
For them as a unit, like combined, yes. Yeah, I think we should see 20 carries combined between the two of them, between the running backs this week. Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't agree with the force feeding part though. I think if you coach the game the right way, the 20 carries will take care of itself. Like, guys, they would have gotten 20 carries against Miami if they didn't go from end of the first half tied 7-7 to next time they step on the field, it's middle of the third quarter and they're down 2 touchdowns. Like, you guys understand that, right? Like, they scored at the end of the first quarter. Actually, with 5 minutes left of the first quarter, they scored to make it 7-7. Miami went all the way down the field, scored a touchdown. Notre Dame's offense comes on the field just to take a knee. Miami starts the second half with the ball, up 14-7. They take over 7 minutes off the clock, score a touchdown. So Notre Dame offense goes from 5+ left in the first half to 7.5 minutes left in the third quarter without doing anything. And they're down. They go from tied to down 2 touchdowns. You just can't go on an 8-minute drive and hope that you can get a touchdown. And now, you have to work with some urgency there. So if that doesn't happen, if the defense just makes one stop in those 2 drives, Notre Dame's offense is going to look different when they get back on the field in the third quarter. And they still had, 16, 17 combined carries, plus Jeremiah Love had how many catches? Weren't they at 20 catches or 20 touches in the game, actually?
That's what I was going to say. Yes, sir.
So, yeah. You don't force feed it. It's got to be part of the game plan, and you've got to be successful doing it. Because there's a scenario, Trevor, where they don't get to 20 touches because Jeremiah went 8 for 135. And
I was just about to say, like,
95.
you answer your question, Irish and Florida. It's because they are always one cut from a house call.
Mm-hmm.
There is a world where Texas A&M just says, screw it, CJ Carr, you got to beat us because we're not going to let Forward 24 beat us because we watched you do that in College Station in week 1 of last season. So, 20 is just an arbitrary number when it's, all right, we're going to give it to them 20 times. Okay, well, what if they get 20-plus touches and they have a combined 63 rushing yards?
Right.
Can't hang our hat on, well, at least they tried to give it to the running backs 20
right.
times. It has to look like per the flow of the game. I'm okay if they get 20 touches if Jeremiah Love has 11 receptions and 4 carries. Like, as long as they're getting him the ball, that's what I care. If you're talking strictly runs, maybe. But again, these are 2 running backs that don't need 12 carries apiece to get to 100 yards. It's just I'm not hanging on to that number. Now, where I will say what they need to do is get them touches earlier. That I agree with.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeremiah Love had, what would that be? He had, I think 10. He had like 14 total touches in the game, and 9 of them came in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. So I do think that it needs to be earlier in the game. But just getting to the arbitrary, like, as long as they get 20 plus, they'll be fine. It's like, maybe.
Right.
Depends on what those look like.
Right. This is where I think Irish and Florida is getting to. The running backs need to be the focal point of the offense. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%. It just is going to look different numbers-wise from week to week.
Mm-hmm.
That's really where it's at.
From Tony 312, I'm going to assume that's arcade.
I don't.
Accardo?
I think that's a. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I know who that is. Yes, that's a former American mobster.
Huh. I guess that falls in line with the profile picture in there. Yeah. But from Tony, which game are you guys tailgating this season?
So we are going to do NC State and USC. The original plan was for the Texas A&M game, but with Angela's surgery and just some different things going on, we had another leak at our house this past weekend. The work that they did last year, they apparently didn't do the plumbing correctly. We haven't been using the guest shower. We finally used it this past week when my mother-in-law was in town because we let her use the guest room, and it started leaking through the roof again. So dealing with that. Luckily, it's not going to be as major. They're going to get it done this week. But just with all that stuff going on, we just weren't going to be able to make it work this weekend. And I don't know, I didn't know that Anne's going to be up to it or not. Like, we went out to dinner last night, first time we've kind of gone out together since her surgery. And she was good, but, tired. And she's trying to convince me, look, I think I can shoot the game this weekend. I was like, Ange, you did some stuff around the house on Sunday and you needed your cane to walk around on Monday. I don't think you're going to be good enough to go take 100 pounds worth of equipment and walk around a football game for 5 hours. But so what we're going to do is my parents are going to come in town for the NC State game and then just stay all week. So they're going to tailgate. They're going to do for both weekends. So we're going to do NC State and Texas A&M. So I'm glad you asked that because that needed to get discussed. I completely forgot. That's how just crazy it's been. I'm like, I should probably remind people we're not doing a tailgate this weekend, but it's just been a little bit crazy, a little bit hectic. But fortunately, they found the leak. They didn't have to tear up as much of the house as they thought they were going to, and they were able to repair it. And just walking into my living room and seeing part of the ceiling and part of the wall gone again, I told my wife, I said, like, fortunately, we're at the peak of housing costs and high interest rates, because otherwise I would have maybe made an emotional decision and just said, screw it, we're selling the house and moving. But then I looked at houses. I literally spent 10 minutes looking at houses in the air and was like, yeah, no, I ain't that mad. I'm not that pissed. So we're not going to do that. But yeah, so that's where we're at. So NC State and USC, we'll have them back-to-back weekends.
Bang. Ghost X, do you know the reasons Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame have restricted media access over his tenure? Was this a trend continuing from the previous regime? Is this ideology consistent in college football and or Tier 1 Power 4 programs?
The last part's absolutely true because more and more teams are doing this. More and more teams are just shutting media out. They'll do press conferences. They don't let – we, as little access as we got during fall camp, there's teams that got less. There's some teams that they don't get any practice access, or they'll let them come every day for like 5 minutes and like watch them stretch, and then they don't see anything else. So it's definitely trending in that direction across college football. Now, it's not everybody. There are some teams that let people come to a lot of practices, but this is not a necessarily unique thing for Notre Dame. What frustrates me is like they have a relatively friendly media, like, and they still kind of treat us like an adversary at times, which I don't understand, but it is what it is. Part of it, there's a lot of reasons for it. Part of it is just coaches want players to not have to deal with all that. Part of it is they're doing their own content now. They've got the Here Come the Irish thing. They've got, their YouTube channel. They've got, their social media where they think they can get the message out. They have that Wake Up the Echoes thing with Tony Simeone does that, which I think is really good. It's really good stuff, but like they're producing their own. They don't need us to do that, and now I'll be honest, I'm frustrated because Marcus Freeman came on our show when he was a coordinator, but now I can't get his coordinators on our show. It's a little annoying, but I've seen it coming, so I'm not surprised by it, but part of it's just a business decision. Why give all this to the media when we can produce our own content and we don't have to worry about answering questions about who should start at left tackle? It's part of it too. And so I just don't think they feel there's as much of a use for people like us. Now, I would say, well, that's kind of BS because now all you're doing is getting your spin and your perspective. And the media's job is not to do that. It's the media's job is to give honest assessment. And so, it is what it is. But it's also not something we got all this amazing coverage when Brian Kelly was here and they've cut it all back. That's not true either. The only difference is Brian Kelly's staff, they usually gave us more access. And really it started post-COVID. I think COVID kind of changed everybody's perspective on things, and they started realizing we can still get this out. We can still get videos out. We can still do this. We don't necessarily need the media there anymore. Writing about certain things, but I'm like, then don't get mad when people put out sourced information from the quarterback battle when you don't give us anything, because we're not going to just sit here for a month and stay quiet. We have jobs to do, and so like there's going to be pushback in that regard, but it's not a surprise, and they're not even close to being the worst offenders in regard to limiting access at all. I mean, we still get Marcus Freeman twice a week. We get coaches and players on Tuesday night. We get Marcus Freeman post-game, players post-game. There's still good access there. It's just, maybe not as much as I would want. And then there's certain things that they do that I just think are unnecessarily adversarial in ways that end up hurting them and more than I think it's a benefit to them. And I also think in this era of NIL, limiting how much your players can be seen and heard from and talked to is also not necessarily the greatest idea ever. But like people say, like, why don't you have players on your show? Because I was told by somebody at Notre Dame that if I was going to have a player on my show, I had to pay him to come on my show. I'm not doing that. Like, I'll let you come on my show and advertise all your different NIL deals and your clothing line and all this. I don't charge people to go on shows. I'm not going to pay someone to come on my show. So, that's why I don't do that.
From Steely McBeam, are you better off running your schemes and games getting better via reps or going vanilla to prevent opponents from getting tape on you?
Do your stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of be vanilla early. So look, run your stuff. That doesn't make your players better. Run your stuff. Now, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean A&M threw every pressure and every coverage structure they have at UTSA or Utah State. They're still running their system. They're not going to come out and like, wow, I didn't know they were a triple option team, against Notre Dame. Like they are who they are. Are there wrinkles that they kind of save for Notre Dame? Certainly. But there would have been things they saved for Notre Dame if they started the season off with Alabama and Florida, because they're all different teams. There's things that they're going to do that work against Notre Dame that may not work against those teams and vice versa. I'm a believer that you come out and run your stuff. And then you're always going to have wrinkles for an opponent. You're always going to have, hey, we've been scouting weeks ahead. We've got this particular trick play that we're going to bring out for the so-and-so team because they're the first team that plays a coverage that would work against. Sure. But you're not intentionally not showing against UTSA. Sometimes some coaches, and I actually am kind of one of these, I like throwing more at teams to give them more to prepare for. Man, they did empty 15 times against Utah State. That's because we could. I could do that against Texas A&M, you know what I mean? Or against Notre Dame, but we could. That's how I am. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. And then I think this is a great way to end today's show. This is a really good question.
From Just Your Ordinary Joe, please remind me what fitball actually refers to.
So this is a great question, Joe, because we've used this expression a lot, fitball versus football. And so essentially what that means is in football on defense, there's something called a fit, a run fit. And so if I'm a middle linebacker and I'm working on a fit with the nose tackle, so let's say he's going against the center, and my job is to fit off of him. So if he goes this way into this gap, I'm fitting off of him near side. If he goes this way or the guard takes him this way, then I have to fit the opposite direction. If I'm a safety working with a linebacker and he's taking on a guard and they're running a run play at us and the linebacker takes on the guard on the outside shoulder, I have to fit off the inside shoulder. He's got the outside shoulder now taken care of. I have to fit off the inside shoulder. So it's essentially, it's a way where you make yourself right based on what happens in front of you. The other way to do it is you go A gap, you go B gap. And that's just what you do. And you attack. And that's more like when you stunt, things like that. So I may call a run stunt where the nose tackles are going to, or the tackles are going to both line up in two techniques, right? Two eyes. So they're both head up, or twos. So they're both head up on the guards. And at the snap, this guy's going to slant into the A gap. This guy's going to slant into the B gap. And this linebacker is going to stun into the B gap. This guy's going to slam into the A gap. Or you may say, hey, we're going to slant them both over a gap, and then the linebacker's going to crash into a gap. Or this guy's going to go here. This guy's going to loop around here, and then the linebacker fits off of them. Those are more downhill, attacking, aggressive. You do those. You can't do those all the time, though, because if you do that all the time, if you don't get that first level taken care of, there's nobody behind them. So that's the issue with it being meant in a football, not fitball. It's not so much that they didn't have run fits last year. Of course they did. It's more so that the way it's being taught now, from conversation I've had, it's a lot more. There's a lot more to the read than there was before. Where before it was a make the quick read and then fly downhill. Where now it's more of a make the read, step to the hole, but you're not necessarily flying downhill to make the play. That's more of what it is. So you're always fitting off things, but it's more so when it's said in that way, Joe, it's more so meant to refer to an aggressiveness with which you do your assignment. You always have a job. You always have a gap to be accountable for, but how are you getting to that gap? That's really what it means. So it's about fitting into a thing as opposed to really hammering, coming downhill and aggressively taking something on. And even if they want to still do run fits, that's fine. They just have to be more aggressive. They can't keep letting the linemen get up to the second level. They've got to be more willing to kind of aggressively attack downhill and take them on. And then the safeties will. So it's kind of layered. The linebackers are fitting off of the defensive linemen, and then the safeties are fitting off of the linebackers when they come downhill. And that's what that means. Yeah. So it's kind of, it's unfortunate. It's turned run fits into like a bad word.
Yeah.
But you always do run fits. It's meant to basically say there's a way to do it where you're aggressive in a way where you're not as aggressive. In the NFL, you see more of the not as aggressive. In college, I just think you need to be a little bit more aggressive with it. because it's more of a running league. The NFL is not as much of a running league anymore. Not many teams run football that much anymore, unless you're the Ravens. And you've got that monster at running back that they have a running back who's so freaking good.
Yeah.
I didn't watch that game. I wasn't normally watching that game, but I saw some crazy updates. And so I jumped on, I went and kind of rewatched it and was like, dude, this guy's a monster. This guy's a monster. And then Josh Allen's a monster. Like, that's two of the best in the business right there, man.
That game was nuts, man.
Yeah.
That game was crazy.
Yeah.
Like I haven't been the biggest fan of some of the product the NFL's rolled out there, but that game was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
fun.
It was, for sure. All right. Well, Trev, I think that's going to do it, man. Great way to end it, Joe. And then to your question about the tailgates, Joe, we can always discuss that. I don't the Joe's question was, would you be open to us, IB faithful, chipping in on a substantive tailgate enhancement, several spots, seating, satellite TV, etc.? The spots part is great. If you guys can get tickets, or spots, let me know. I'll buy the spots from you because we'd like to have more spots, but we, obviously have to pay for the parking passes. If you guys have satellites and stuff like that you want to do, just reach out to me. I don't want anybody spending any money on stuff, though. The whole point of us doing the tailgate is this is our thank you to you guys. So we buy the food, I buy the parking passes, I buy the food, my mom cooks it. It's a thank you to you guys. You're already spending money, especially someone like you, Joe, who's been a member from day one. You have a bunch of IB gear. I don't want you guys to have to fork over more money to help out the tailgate. I say, look, this is on me. This is my thank you to you guys. But I also am not going to go out and get TV because there's so much that goes into that. So if somebody's like, hey, I've got this TV situation or whatever, I'm like, cool, let's talk about it. Hit me up, Brian@irishbreakdown.com. That's my email address. So hit me up and we can discuss it and talk about it. So thanks, Joe. Appreciate you as always, my man.
Well, good deal. That's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Here in about a little bit over 45 minutes, IB Nation Sports Beat is going live to do their midweek mailbag. So be sure to go and hop over and check them out. Give them a listen. But before you guys head out of here, be sure to hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Whichever streaming platform you listen to us on, we'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. Brian and I will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. We're going to be doing our keys to victory. We're going to give game predictions, and then we're also going to talk about some of the other games that are happening around college football. But it's game week for Notre Dame. They get a night game in South Bend as their home opener. I'm going to be up on campus walking around all day with Lauren and my mom. She hasn't been to that campus on a game day in quite some time, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Very excited for that. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So for Brian, I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.